Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I hope you get some play soon this afternoon, wherever you might be watching your cricket today. But like you say, our focus here is on the football. Blue skies above us, big white puffy clouds down at the Vitality Stadium in Dorset for two teams in mid-table in the Premier League. I think that's fair to say. Bournemouth 11th, Brighton in 12th, and we are about to see the two teams come out from the small black and red tunnel down to our left-hand side where the dugouts are as well. And Bournemouth led out by their captain Adam Smith, Brighton by theirs, Lewis Dunk, and I've got a former Premier League defender alongside me for the next 90 minutes. Franny Benali, lovely to see you.
Afternoon, Chris.
What an interesting game this is, and it's interesting from a Bournemouth perspective because they have a tiny sniff, I would say, and you probably put Brighton in that category as well of still getting into those European places. Probably fading a touch though now, isn't it, for both of these teams? Nevertheless, a significant South Coast afternoon.
Yeah, most definitely, isn't it? And the form and results of both teams up until maybe last week for Bournemouth when they had that 1-0 win against Wolves has been a little bit off the boil, shall we say, and just fallen away a little bit. But you know, some 1 point between the two teams this afternoon. Obviously, Brighton have that one extra game in hand over Bournemouth in the table. But yeah, they'll be looking to finish the season strong, and each team will look to ideally be finishing in the top half of the table. That'd be finish the season strongly with a view to obviously kicking on with the next campaign. But it's a brutal place to play the Premier League, isn't it? And then, sort of like there's tough games, no easy matches, and with again both the sides struggling at certain stages. I mean, look at Bournemouth's start to the season that they had. I mean, they had to wait till a 10th Premier League game, didn't they, before they got their win. So the way they've bounced back has been incredible, and we've seen some great football here. And I'm, with the sun coming out as well, I'm hopeful of getting a good game today.
It's high time the sun was out, because it certainly wasn't out when we arrived at the stadium earlier. It was grey skies, there was rain, but thankfully the pitch here at Bournemouth is looking immaculate. And the two teams are just having some photos taken with some of the mascots as well. Very contrasting weeks for these two. Bournemouth 1-0 winners at Wolves on Wednesday night. Significant not just because they collected 3 points, but of course it was up against their former manager Gary O'Neill as well, who had come down here earlier in the campaign and won with Wolves. So I think the Bournemouth fans particularly enjoyed that victory at Molineux. But for Brighton, 24 hours later, you talked about how brutal the Premier League is. Well, they got a real lesson in that from Manchester City on Thursday night, beaten 4-0 at home and thoroughly outclassed.
Yeah, I mean, any game against a Manchester City side, home or away, is going to be a big test and challenge, isn't it? And they're coming into this, they're without a win in their last 5 games, and they've only scored 1 in their last 4. So goals have been a little bit difficult to come by, but the positive side for Brighton's perspective is that they've won 3, I think, out of the last 4 meetings here, haven't they? So, or against these two sides. So, they'll be taking a little bit of heart from that, but expecting a positive start to this game from Bournemouth. Will certainly want to start on the front foot and put their visitors under pressure right from the go.
Well, those Bournemouth players right now, all 11 of them are carrying out that pre-match huddle that you see so often now with teams, all of them slightly bent over in a circle. And a final exchange of words. Brighton have already had their final thoughts between them, and we are about to get underway. So I'll give you the team news. Brighton are going to kick us off here. They're in their home strip, even though they are on their travels today, of the blue and white stripes with the blue shorts and the blue socks. And Bournemouth in their black and red with the black shorts and the black and red socks. And they're going to be shooting Bournemouth from left to right in this first half as we look at it. So the team news as we're about to get underway. 3 changes for Bournemouth. There's no Ilya Zabani, which is a big blow for them to lose their Ukrainian centre-half, because he's had an excellent season. Milos Kerkez, the Hungarian left-back, is suspended as João Pedro gets this game underway. And Ryan Christie's only on the bench for Bournemouth today as well. So Kelly, Ouattara and Unal have come into the Bournemouth team. I'll give you that full team in just a moment. And for Brighton and for De Zerbi, you're talking about that 4-0 defeat to Manchester City. 7 changes from Roberto De Zerbi today as Brighton win a throw high up inside Bournemouth's half on the far right. The 7 players to drop out are Steele, Veltman, Van Hecke, who's injured, Baliba, Lallana, Motta and Welbeck. There's only 4 players that have kept their place in the team today for Brighton. Dunk, Barco, the young Argentine left-back, Gross, and Joao Pedro. So he's rung the changes, Franny, Roberto De Zerbi today, and Brighton have got a free kick here early on, 20 yards inside Bournemouth's half on the right.
Yeah, we always see many managers making a little tweak to their lineups, don't we? But yeah, that's quite a significant change, isn't it? And especially with the personnel, and we were touching on it pre-match, Chris, weren't we, that you look at the Brighton substitutes that are on the bench, and they've got such a strong bench.
Just keep an eye on this first Brighton free kick, which Gross swings in. It's come off the head of Kelly. It's loose in the box. I think it bounced off Igor, off his shins, the Brighton defender, and out of play for a Bournemouth goal kick. So we've played just over a minute. Bournemouth 0, Brighton 0. So the team's in full. Bournemouth, Travers in goal. Preferred to Neto at the moment, was picked during the week at Wolves as well. And then Smith, Senesi, Kelly and Ouattara. Scott and Cook as the 2 holding midfielders today. And Solanke and Onal are almost playing as a 2 up front with Semenyo and Cliver either side of them. But the real interest in that Brighton team, as Joao Pedro wins a throw on this left-hand side. First Premier League starts for both Odeluga Afire, the 21-year-old, and the 19-year-old forward Mark Omani as well, the Irishman. So Verbruggen in goal, Afire, Igor, Dunk and Barco, and then Gilmour and Gross, Adingra, Buonanotte, Joao Pedro and Omani. So great interest to see how those 2 young Brighton players get on today. As Bournemouth pick up the ball on the right, off goes Semenyo for the first down this right-hand side towards the byline. Low ball across the penalty area. Dunk was there on the edge of the 6-yard box. He got his right boot to it, and Brighton pick up possession with Billy Gilmour. Yeah,
they'll be certainly looking to exploit this right-hand side, and Semenyo's on the ball again. A positive player, direct player, and his ball into the box was just unable to find one of his teammates on that occasion, but certainly a threat for Bournemouth, and having scored a few goals this season as well, he's a threat with getting on the score sheet himself as well as being a provider.
Yeah, he's had a tremendous season, Antoine Semenyo. In fact, he was a Premier League Player of the Month nominee as the Brighton defenders collect the ball. It is Dunk who sends it upfield. It's not a great ball by Dunk. It's only gone halfway up the pitch straight towards Lewis Cook, who can't play the forward pass. And Brighton retrieve it again with Joao Pedro, was having a bit of his shirt pulled onto. He's gone down holding his face. So has Lewis Cook. Plays continue with Barco is in possession for Brighton, and he has his heels tripped on the halfway line by Alex Scott, and it's a free kick to Brighton. 3 minutes played, Bournemouth 0, Brighton 0.
Well, for 1 second there we had 3 players down on the floor. There's now a Brighton player, and Cook for Bournemouth just picking up a little knock, I think, between that little challenge, but Barco doing really well, I think, just driving out of defence when he picked the ball up, showing his skill and ability. There's a little bit of a tangle.
Sort of both of the players ended up sort of inadvertently bashing each other in the face there.
Yeah, they're both back on their feet now. No serious damage done, I don't think, but referee Paul Tierney this afternoon just calling a couple of the Bournemouth Brighton players, should I say, together, and explaining to the captain Lewis Dunk what he's expecting from the game today, and stamping his authority early, shall we say.
I think Joao Pedro might have had 1 or 2 things to say there, the Brighton forward, who's got his hair braided tightly to the top of his head as Igor collects the ball from the Brighton free kick. It goes back to Verbruggen, who's back in goal for Brighton today. Has primarily played a lot of the recent games for Brighton in goal in the Premier League in the past few weeks, but was left out for Jason Steele against Manchester City, as the ball is switched out to the left-hand side for Adingra for Brighton, who's halfway inside Bournemouth's half, and he's going to have a run at Adam Smith here. He's now into the penalty area. Barco off the left-hand side, low ball in. Didn't get enough height on the ball, or indeed any real purchase on where it was going to go, and it is cleared away up to the halfway line where Brighton retrieve it again.
Yeah, good defending from Adam Smith there. I think he just sort of like kept backing off, waiting for Adingra to make that first move and action, but he dealt with it really well and ended up collecting the ball himself. But it's interesting, the play, I think sometimes Brighton come in for a little bit of criticism, playing out such short passes and right from the back for the goalkeeper, and Bournemouth are clearly setting about looking to press them high up the pitch this afternoon. And
that is exactly how Manchester City dismantled Brighton on Thursday night. They pressed them right up on the edge of their own penalty area, and Brighton, who so often are used to having a bit of time in possession when the defenders have got it, they didn't have that against Manchester City. I wonder whether Andoni Iraola's looked at that.
100%, most definitely. They'll look at ways that how they can sort of nullify the opposition, and obviously focus on your own strengths within the team as well. But if a team plays that way, there's occasions if you don't get past the press, then there's the risk and reward is there that you can win the ball in the last third and be straight in on goal.
Here is O'Fire on the far right hand side, one of those young Brighton players who's getting his first Premier League start today. But he's lost the ball, and it is back with Travers, the tall Irish goalkeeper, in Bournemouth's goal today. Remember, Andoni Iraola chose to leave out Neto during the week against Wolves, his captain, which was an interesting call. Iraola was asked about it in his press conference this week. He said, I don't see the goalkeeper position any different to how I see an outfield player. You wouldn't ask me if I was leaving out Alex Scott or why he was included, so why am I fielding questions on Neto? Yeah,
an interesting one, isn't it? And I think he alluded to how Mark Travers has performed well in training. We know how the goalkeepers union, they work together, specifically often away from the field players in groups, and he's been impressed with what he's been doing on the training ground. And I think today is only his second league appearance of the season, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and a clean sheet against Wolves during the week as Kluivert collects a high ball forward down the left-hand side. But I think it's just gone out of play. It's escaped the attention of Kluivert in front of those Brighton fans who are in the small stand that runs along the side of the pitch opposite. Be about 1,000 or so Brighton fans in there today, kitted out in their blue and white. I can see plenty of shirts, some having to shield their eyes from the sun as Bournemouth get the ball back from the Brighton throw, but it's back on the halfway line. 7 minutes played, 0-0 so far, Bournemouth against Brighton in the Premier League, and no goals so far either in the early stages of the North London derby, which is also taking place at 2 o'clock today. Tottenham against Arsenal. Massive game, not just locally of course, but for those two teams' seasons as well, with Spurs trying to get into the Champions League places and Arsenal obviously pushing for a first Premier League title in 20 years. 0-0 between those two. It's live right now over on 5 Live. Here is Igor, but the ball came back to him from Joao Pedro, who was clattered into from behind by Senesi, and he has picked up the first yellow card of the game, the Bournemouth defender, for that challenge.
Yeah, and it's been clear, as we just touched on a few moments ago, Chris, that Bournemouth are looking to press Brighton high in their own half, and I've got to say, just seeing that one, yes, it may have been a foul, but I think Senesi's argument was it wasn't really a booking, and I'd go along with that. I think Paul Tierney's just trying to set his standard and his stall out early in this game, but a little bit harsh for me to show Senesi the yellow card for that challenge.
Former Feyenoord defender is Marcos Senesi, so I'm sure he took great interest in the news of Arne Slot's impending arrival at Liverpool in the Premier League. Here is Billy Gilmour, the former Chelsea midfielder, with the bandage wrapped round his left wrist, but players had to stop again here because Lewis Dunk has got a problem here, the Brighton captain. He's down about 10 yards outside his penalty area. He's face down, he's grimacing, he seems to be holding his arm maybe. His boots are twitching a little bit as well. He looks in a fair bit of discomfort here, the Brighton captain. Yeah,
I missed what actually happened there, and he's not the kind of player at all that would go down and stay down, is he, if he wasn't injured? I think there was some sort of connection maybe, and maybe it's just winded. I think he was holding his side at one point, so although just seeing a replay, he might be holding another part of his anatomy, so it might have been something a little bit more painful, shall we say.
And for that we forgive him. He can take as long as he likes. He's just getting back up to his feet now, Lewis Dunk, but he's sort of leant over with his hands on his thighs at the moment while he's having a conversation with Paul Tierney. And it's going to be a drop ball with Brighton continuing play once Lewis Dunk is okay.
I think Paul Tierney found the amusing side of it. He seemed to be smiling there at one point, so
I'd like to think Paul Tierney also saw the sympathetic side of it as well. As play restarts and the ball is immediately given to Lewis Dunk to test his movement. He seems to be absolutely fine, rolls the ball under his foot, gives it to his centre-back partner Igor, and out to the left-hand side for Barco, who's got that very noticeable auburn hair. Valentin Barco, the Argentine. Off he goes, the left-back, through the centre of the park. Not a great pass forward from him, though. It was short of finding Joao Pedro and stopped by Lloyd Kelly, and Bournemouth have it with Scott, and now Semenyo, who spun away from Igor. He went down, but Bournemouth carry on because Enes Unal has it. Solanke's there, Dunk stopped it. It might have hit Dunk's arm, you know. Back in by Semenyo, behind off Igor. It's going to be a Bournemouth corner, but Dominic Solanke is suggesting that ball has hit the arm of Lewis Dunk. Franny Benali.
Well, could well have been, and we'll maybe get another look at it, but wonderful play from Bournemouth. First it was Semenyo down on the top, and then the ball gets played into Solanke. No, I think it's a great challenge from Lewis Dunk, but dangerous play down the right hand side again. It does maybe hit his hand, but it's almost like a deflection off the boot straight back up. There's nothing intentional there at all.
No, his arm wasn't in a natural position, was it? And it's come off the underside of his elbow, so there's that will be a very short review from the VAR today, which is Chris Kavanagh, but it is a Bournemouth corner nonetheless from this right hand side. They're going from left to right, the home team in this first half, in the bright sunshine on the Dorset coast. No goals so far between Bournemouth and Brighton, and a slight pause while referee Paul Tierney again has a bit of admin to do, having a chat with a couple of players, including Billy Gilmore, who is down there, the Brighton midfielder. Senesi as well. Yeah.
Unhappy with maybe the way that they were trying to stop one another, I think, on that.
So Ouattara's got the all clear to take the Bournemouth corner, and after all of that he's sent it right to the edge of the penalty area, where Adam Smith with his right foot curls it up to the far post. It's come off Gross or Dunk, one of the two Brighton players, and gone behind for another Bournemouth corner.
I think that was a well worked sort of that nearly came off training ground move. The ball played all the way back to Adam Smith. It was Alex Scott, I think, that made a little arched run around the back of the defence trying to receive the ball, but Brighton have put it out for a second corner in close succession.
It was Lewis Dunk who cleared it away, and almost did so with the back of his heel. It was very nonchalant from the Brighton centre half. Here comes the latest corner into the near post, and nodded in. It was Senesi who was lurking from short range, no more than 2 yards. And the Bournemouth centre half, who's had a great season in terms of goals, because that's his fourth in the Premier League, has put the Cherries in front 13 minutes in. Bournemouth 1, Brighton 0.
Well, you've got to say it's what the home side deserved. They've started so well. A couple of quick succession corners, and it's a wonderfully whipped in corner. I think it's Unal who gets maybe the first little touch, and it just pops up for Senesi. He's in the right place at the right time, and he just prods it home with his head at the near post from a few yards out to give the home side the lead, 1-0.
Super reactions, wasn't it, from the defender who was just lingering a couple of yards out, and he's powered that beyond Verbruggen, who did not stand a chance, the Brighton goalkeeper, from short range like that. And Brighton, who was so heavily beaten on Thursday night, and just 3 days later they are behind here against Bournemouth. And I noticed, Franny, this week that only once before ever have Roberto De Zerbi and a Brighton team lost consecutive Premier League games, which is an amazing, really. He's been there for 18 months, and it happened in the very first month that he was in charge. So he's gone all that time, and never has he since then lost consecutive Premier League games. But there's a threat of that happening here.
Well, yeah, most definitely. And it's a little bit worrying. It's incredible that stat, as you say, but I think that they also haven't. They've only just won 6 of the last 27 Premier League games, drawn 11 and losing 10. So yes, you could say they're maybe hard to beat, but that would be a worry. And the lack of goals that are in the team at the moment as well, is a big concern for them, I'm sure.
Roberto De Zerbi is down there in his technical area with both his fingers sort of pointing towards some of his coaching staff, and is clearly quite irritated by what he's seen. Probably the defending that he saw that has led to that Bournemouth goal. He's got his black gilet on with the big hood puffed out the back of his top, and he's just slumped into his seat. And when I say slumped, I mean he's properly slumped. He's just dropped in, and almost a very dejected manner from the Italian, as Bournemouth come again at his Brighton team off this right hand side. Semenyo just outside the box, good defending by Adingra, the Ivorian, diving in at his feet to win the ball. Brighton get it up to the halfway line. Bournemouth retrieve it with Smith. Now Gilmore has it back, and this is Marco Mani. We haven't seen too much of him so far, the Irish under-21 international, in the first 15 minutes here. Brighton haven't really been anywhere near the edge of Bournemouth's box apart from the first 2 minutes, Franny.
No, well, I think every time a Brighton player has picked the ball up, Chris, there's a Bournemouth player right in front of them, putting them under pressure and putting a challenge in. They've got no time to pick a pass out whatsoever.
There's a real problem for Lewis Cook here. Adingra's swinging the ball in. Brighton are going to try and carry on here. Not under any obligation to put the ball out, and finally the referee is stopping play, and this could be a problem for Lewis Cook, because it looks, Franny, to me like he's landed and possibly popped a shoulder there.
Well, he's certainly holding his shoulder, isn't he? And he slid in to make a challenge, and he stood straight up immediately after, but then when he was on his feet, he dropped to his knees again and rolled over to holding his shoulder, as if it's almost like as he slid in, his left arm was outstretched, and I think the weight of his body is maybe just sort of overextended something in his shoulder. Those are the sort of ones that can be really painful and crazily sort of keep you out for some time, as strange as it sounds, but he certainly felt it straight away, didn't he? And
also an injury that, and I can vouch for this from personal experience, once you've done it once, there's a weakness there.
Well, that's often the worry with that kind of thing, isn't it? The shoulder socket is one of those things that if you dislocate it, or it pops out, or the ligaments are a little bit weaker than normal, then it can be a problem going forward. But fingers crossed, the supporters, the home support, will be hoping that Adam Smith will be okay to continue, and there's no long-term injury worry for him.
Yeah, so just down there testing out the flexibility of arm Lewis Cook and the shoulder, and just to see how everything is for the Bournemouth midfielder with the medical staff.
As a fullback, he might not be too keen on taking any throw-ins from now, would he? It'd be interesting to see what he does.
Yeah, it looks like he's often, don't they? I don't know that that's what it is, by the way. I don't know if it is a shoulder that has popped out, and he's sort of moving his arm as if he has the flexibility in it again here, Lewis Cook, but they often pop them back in, don't they, and ask players to carry on. I'll tell you, when I did mine, I would not wanted anyone to pop it back in and for me to carry on.
No, I'd never have done one, thankfully, but I've seen some of my teammates with a dislocated shoulder, and to say that they was screeching is in agony was an understatement. So yeah, he's on his feet and he seems okay, and he's waiting to come back on.
Yeah, so that's good to see. Bournemouth leading Brighton by 1-0. We're back underway with play as well, just after the 17-minute mark here. The goal from Marcos Senesi 13 minutes in for Bournemouth. So Bournemouth 1, Brighton 0. These two teams that are alongside each other in the Premier League table. Bournemouth on 45 points ahead of this one, Brighton on 44. Brighton have got an absolutely symmetrical record in the Premier League this season. Played 33, won 11, drawn 11, lost 11. But something has got to give today, and at the moment not in a good way. Here's a fire spinning away on the right hand side for Brighton, cross into the box, a bit too heavy for Adingra, towards the far post where Semenyo and Barco are scrapping for it. Semenyo's got the better of the Brighton defender, and he's run away with it, and he's given it to Lewis Cook on this near right hand side, who's been put under a little bit of pressure. Sets it for Adam Smith to send forward towards a now. Igor wins the aerial battle between those two, collected again by the composed Pascal Gross in midfield for Brighton. And here's Joao Pedro, who is gesticulating towards his teammates to come towards him to retrieve the ball. Picked up by Pascal Gross, left wing, running down it, gives it to Adingra. Adingra checks back inside, comes in field, gives it to Joao Pedro 10 yards outside the box, tried to clip it over the top of Bournemouth's defence for Adingra, too much on it. Bournemouth goal kick, they lead 1-0. Franny Benali.
Game's being played at a great tempo, Chris, isn't it? Bournemouth, as we've said right from the start, have been putting Brighton under a lot of pressure regardless of where they are on the pitch. Brighton have been trying to do the same a little bit, maybe not quite successfully against this home side, but it's a good tempo to the match, and with an early goal as well, it sets up the rest of the game great for us.
It does, and we were together, weren't we, for the reverse game between these two back in September, and Bournemouth were ahead in that game and lost by 3-1, so there will be some hope for Brighton in that sense, as stretching to keep the ball in play on the far side. He can't. He stopped it from going out for a throw, but he couldn't prevent the goal kick. 20 minutes played, and Bournemouth leading Brighton by 1-0.
Yeah, and as you say, sort of like with these games, it's probably not the fiercest of South Coast rivalries, but it's a South Coast game in the same division, and you want to beat these teams that are in and around you.
Yeah, 90 miles, by the way, between these two clubs, and obviously there's a far more fierce South Coast rivals with two clubs in between these two clubs. Geographically, in terms of Southampton and Portsmouth.
I was going to say, I wonder who they could be.
I think you know very well. former Southampton defender Franny Benali with us here on 5 Live Sports Extra. João Pedro for Brighton, ball into the box, away by Lloyd Kelly, who's come back into the Bournemouth team today. Lots to talk about him leaving Bournemouth this summer. His contract's up. The club have been negotiating with his team about trying to get a deal done, but at the moment it's not happened, so Bournemouth are preparing to lose Lloyd Kelly this summer. João Pedro for Billy Gilmore, lofted out to the right hand side for Brighton, going from right to left, 5 yards outside Bournemouth's box. They have it with a fire, and now back with Dunk, who is just inside the Bournemouth half.
Brighton have responded quite well since the goal, Chris. You know, they're zipping the ball around better than what they did at the beginning. Bournemouth aren't able to get quite as tight to them, so it's promising signs for the away side.
Gilmore from right to left, finding Adingra, took it down really smartly. Adingra in the box towards that far post, headed away by Cook, back into the danger area by João Pedro, and beyond the reach of Marco Mani, the young Brighton striker, and through to Mark Travers, Bournemouth's keeper.
Yeah, looks pretty settled, you know, from what I've seen since his last game, and that clean sheet that you said earlier against Wolves, and this early start. He looks composed, he looks confident. His handling's been good. Looks like his distribution's pretty good as well. So yeah, very, very impressed from what we've seen of him so far.
He's in the luminous yellow today. Mark Travers began the season actually on loan with Stoke City in the Championship, but was recalled in October of last year because of an injury to Neto. Well played Ouattara in the left back position. He's wriggled out of an awkward area, but Solanke's run into trouble. He's run into a fire. Has got away from 2 of them here. Odeluga Afire, off he goes. Tries to cut it back into the path of Buonanotte, who hasn't seen too much of the ball so far, the young Brighton midfielder, and Bournemouth clear it all the way up towards the halfway line for a Brighton throw on the far right.
Yeah, some good play out on that far side of the game initially from Bournemouth. Ouattara doing so well, wriggling out of trouble with some close proximity of Brighton players around him, and then it was Afire whose turn it was, but his ball was just a little bit lack short.
Lloyd Kelly back to goalkeeper Mark Travers. Bournemouth leading Brighton by 1-0. You might recognise that surname Afire, by the way, and there is a link there because Odeluga Afire is the nephew of Martin Afire, of course a great rugby player of his time. Cross codes as well, played the rugby league with the Wigan Warriors, and then of course switched to the Union, I think in his latter years, if memory serves me correct.
Yeah, I wasn't a huge follower, but I've certainly got visions of Martin Afire just picking a ball up and flying past players. Strong, quick, brave. That's what the Brighton fans will want from their Afire version.
Yeah.
In a football shirt, flying up the wing.
Yeah, Afire V2 or whatever we want to call him. Odeluga Afire, already actually you can see just from the way that he plays that he's got some serious speed about him. Here is Semenyo, who'd also you'd put in that category as well, and he's having an excellent season for Bournemouth, and at the moment he's been hounded by Adingra and by Barco, but he's got out of trouble. He's got the ball back to Adam Smith, the Bournemouth right back, and here is Alex Scott, almost halfway inside his own half, right side, forward it goes by Adam Smith, headed away by Igor, picked up again by Solanke, who is almost playing alongside Enes Ünal in that Bournemouth forward line today. Now Buonanotte bumped into by Cook. Free kick to Brighton. Bournemouth still with that 1-0 lead from Senesi's goal.
Interesting little dynamic how that sort of tactical sort of setup is going to plan out, Chris, isn't it? You mentioned both Solanke and Ünal, you know, both recognised strikers. Are they going to play as a 2, which they look like when they're trying to close down and win the ball back, or is one of them going to drop in and play more in that 10 role, as we've seen many of the players doing in the past for Bournemouth? But it looks like they're just mixing it up a little bit, playing as a 2 up against the Brighton defence. But at the moment Solanke's just dropping into that midfield area a little bit more once they haven't got the ball.
He's on loan from Getafe, Enes Ünal. They do have an option on in Bournemouth to buy him. I think that's something that Andoni Iraola would like to do, but they haven't had a good chance to have a look at him. It's his first Premier League start today. Obviously it's been very difficult for him to displace Dominic Solanke in this Bournemouth team, and Iraola obviously wants to have a glance and see if Enes Ünal can cut it from the start of a Premier League game, but doesn't want to lose Dominic Solanke from his team, so he's playing them both today. And Bournemouth at the moment, not through a centre forward but through a centre back, have the lead here against Brighton, but it's the visitors who have got the ball with Pascal Gross just outside their penalty area, and now at the feet of Lewis Dunk, making his 238th Premier League appearance for Brighton today, which already was a club record, you won't be surprised to hear. long-standing member of this Brighton team, blue and white through and through. And his pass back to the young goalkeeper Bart Verbruggen, who you forget is only 21 years old, because he doesn't really have the stature of somebody who's 21. He just looks like he carries the experience of an old pro, as Brighton, with a fire, again cutting in from that right-hand side, clipped by Ouattara, got a piece of his heels, free kick Brighton.
Yeah, he's looked quite bright down that right-hand side of fire, hasn't he, for Brighton, and certainly bursting forward whenever he can, and just showing his skill a little bit there, drawing the foul, winning his side a free kick. They'll certainly be needing that a little bit more to get back into this game.
So Brighton have sent Lewis Dunk forward and Igor, so the two centre-halves are up for this Brighton free kick, which is still a long way back. I mean, it's got to be about 15 yards only inside the Bournemouth half over on the right-hand side. Bournemouth 1, Brighton 0. Here on 5 Live Sports Extra and BBC Sounds. In by Pascal Gross, off the head of Igor. It's dropped back to him again, got it on his feet, and then the shot from the youngster Omani, which he's hooked wide of Travers' left-hand post.
It was a strange one, that, for me, Chris. There was no real conviction from either the attacking players or the defending players. It just sort of like ricocheted up between the two of them, then it got flicked into the middle a little bit and ended up with the scuffed shot. So yeah, almost something that came to nothing, really.
It's Spurs 1, Arsenal 1 in the North London derby. Arsenal ahead through an own goal from Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, but I think Mickey van der Ven might have just equalised for Tottenham. We'll get some confirmation of that in just a moment. I just saw that flash up on my phone there. So Spurs and Arsenal live right now over on 5 Live. 1-0 Bournemouth lead here. This is Lewis Cook. Kluivert's lost out to Gilmour, has taken it off him on the halfway line. Now João Pedro. This is speedy from Brighton as it goes out to Buonanotte, who's escaped the attention of the defender. He's in the box. Buonanotte still going. It was almost a magical goal, and he's been blocked by the sprawling Travers at his feet. It's going to be a Brighton corner.
Oh, it was a wonderful bit of play from Buonanotte, didn't he? He picked the ball up, and he had a bit of time and space initially, but then he had two Bournemouth players around, and he skipped past the first defender, and you're just thinking, try and pick someone out. He couldn't really get his head up to sort of pick out one of his teammates, and he ran it just that little bit further in, and by then he was able to be smothered by Mark Travers coming out from his goal, but he's won his side a corner.
Did well at his near post there as well, the Irish international Travers. So Brighton corner as we move towards the half hour. The sunshine is still out in force here over Vitality Stadium. Lovely conditions for football now as Brighton's corner is towards Dunk. It didn't quite reach him, away by O'Neill, down by a fire. Gilmour from the edge of the box, hooks back into the far post, headed back across goal, away by O'Neill again. He's been there twice for Bournemouth, and actually the flag is not up. I thought the offside had been given, but actually the referee, I think, is stopping play because two players, one from Brighton, João Pedro and Dominic Solanke, I think, have both got head injuries here.
Yeah, that ball was played back into the 18-yard area following the initial corner, and obviously there's a number of players that went up. João Pedro's back to his feet, so he seems okay, but Dominic Solanke is still lying on the floor waiting a bit of treatment. João Pedro seems to be absolutely fine, but there was clearly a clash of heads when they went up to challenge for that ball.
Sort of shaking his head, João Pedro, as if to try and relieve himself of the pain that he's feeling. Dominic Solanke not yet back on his feet, so just a little wary of how much impact there was on Dominic Solanke from João Pedro. It was not a particularly nice one, was it?
No, and it's weird. Sometimes you see those ones where, you know, they're almost quite sickening, aren't they? A real heavy clash, but it doesn't have to be a real full-blown kind of thing. It could be just heading the ball in a certain way, or just a glancing kind of collision with heads, and just a lower intensity of impact, if you like. But you know, we're clearly so mindful of concussion and the effects of that nowadays, so I'm sure both players will be checked out and to make sure that they're both okay to continue.
Thankfully Dominic Solanke is back on his feet, walking behind the goal at the moment, because he's obviously going to have to leave the field of play. Both these teams have got a bit of an issue in the moment in terms of absentees. For Bournemouth today, there's no Kirkesh because of suspension, and then their injury list consists of Tyler Adams, Chris Mepham, Luis Sinistera, Marcus Tavernier, who's had a great season for them as well, Romain Fav, Ryan Fredericks. They're all unavailable. Brighton's list is actually even longer. I'll give you those names in a moment, because it is well worth noting how many players Brighton are missing right now.
Well, that could be a team sheet in itself, couldn't it? And what a quality team it would be. You know, I've got a few of the names down myself, Chris, and yeah, there's a lot of talent there that De Zerbi hasn't been able to call upon.
Senesi being harried by Gilmour, who has gone down from a challenge from Ouattara, and he doesn't like the challenge, Gilmour. He is suggesting that Dango Ouattara has stamped on him here. That's what Billy Gilmour is saying to referee Paul Tierney. Franny Benali, what's your view on it?
Well, he's certainly making that complaint to him, and I don't think there's anything that he's nicked the ball away. Billy Gilmour maybe has sort of had some little contact on top of his boot or his ankle, and he's still remonstrating to Paul Tierney, the referee. I think that's a genuine challenge from Ouattara, just to nick the ball away from him. Nothing in it for me.
No, and the officials agree with you, Franny. It's going to be a Brighton throw, a Fire taking it 2/3 of the way inside Bournemouth's half on the right. Back to the halfway line for Duncan. He in turn has gone back to Verbruggen, who at the moment is marshalling. That's probably about 10 yards or so outside of his penalty box, in all orange, the Brighton goalkeeper. Well, I say all orange, sort of different shades of tangerine, isn't it, really? There's sort of light orange, a darker tangerine on that shirt as well. With the white gloves, and he gives it back to Lewis Dunk, and out to the right-hand side for a Fire in front of those Brighton supporters here at Bournemouth today. 31 minutes play, Bournemouth 1, Brighton 0. The goal from Marcos Senesi 13 minutes in from a corner from close range.
It's turned into a good little battle, that, isn't it? A Fire against Ouattara over on that right-hand side for Brighton. The Bournemouth left back has got his work cut out there a little bit. A Fire's the one that seems to be bombing forward a little bit more out the two of them at the moment.
Oh, Scott's taking it off Igor down by the side of the pitch here, and Scott's running into the box, and Scott's cut it back, and Unal's missed it. Unal has missed it from about 10 yards with his right foot. He's dragged it wide of Verbruggen's right post.
It's a horrible miss. It's a great bit of play from Scott, sorry. He picks the ball up. He wins the ball back on the touchline, and then he drives towards the near post into the 18-yard box. Then he cuts it back for Unal on the penalty spot with the goal almost at his mercy, and he just scuffs it and pulls it past the post. Would have been a great opportunity to have gone 2 up.
Does have a Premier League goal. Enes Unal came off the bench to get Bournemouth a point here against Sheffield United a few weeks ago, but on his first Premier League start he really should have added to the tally there. So still the lead for Bournemouth, but still only by 1. This is Lewis Dunk for Brighton on the edge of his own penalty area. Now Pascal Gross. Remember, this Brighton team have only won 1 of their last 8 in the... A Fire is carrying the challenge for Brighton to try and get back into it here as he goes off down the right hand side. Kelly challenges him. Last touch has actually come off the Brighton man, who disagrees, but it's going to be a Bournemouth throw.
Well, the assistant referee agreed with Kelly. It was good play from him. A Fire charging down that touchline again, but Lloyd Kelly doing well, forcing him back.
1 point between these two in the Premier League table right now, but if it stays like this, there'll be 4 between them. But Brighton have played a game fewer than Bournemouth. Here is Solanke for Cliver, tried to work it out wide. He got a deflection, it ran back into his path, and now he's sprinting up towards the edge of the penalty area. Barco's cut it out, he's not got enough on it, and then Scott's shot blocked by Dunk, who dived in at his feet, and it's hit Lewis Dunk, and it's spun over the top of the bar for a Bournemouth corner.
And what a challenge it was. Could have saved his side from going 2 down again. A few good chances for Bournemouth in the last few minutes. The ball drops straight to Alex Scott. He unleashes a first-time shot, but Lewis Dunk's sliding challenge ricochets up and over the bar. So
Bournemouth corner from the left. They've already scored from a corner from the left-hand side in this game. Cook into a similar area, off a Brighton head that time, and it's come out to the opposite side, so this near right where Barco has gone chasing. Has he put Senesi under enough pressure to commit the foul? He hasn't. It's going to be a Brighton throw. Barco tried to take it quickly, and I think mercifully for the young Brighton defender, it was a terrible throw, but I don't think it came in, so he's got away with it.
The assistant referee stood right behind him, hasn't he? So he would have had a good view of the throw itself, and I agree, I don't think it came in at all, so he got a second opportunity.
Yeah, which he does a bit better with as it goes up towards Omani, battling with Senesi. No free kick. Omani ended up on the floor. Here's Alex Scott, the young Bournemouth midfielder, who, when I've seen him this season, Franny, and I know he's had a few injuries and hasn't necessarily had a regular run in this Bournemouth team, but there are certain games where I've watched him and I've thought there is a real top-class player there.
Yeah, exactly. I wholly agree with you, Chris. You know, really suffered with his injury issues, but the glimpses we've seen, he's been outstanding at times.
Adingra into the box for Brighton, looking for Barco. First touch probably let him down, showed a bit too much of the ball to Senesi, who's put it out of play for a Brighton throw on the left. They're still trailing Bournemouth by 1-0, and we are now in the final 10 minutes of the first half at Vitality Stadium, sun-drenched Vitality Stadium. Billy Gilmore for Brighton. Back on the halfway line is Igor, into the feet of Gross, who looks so comfortable, doesn't he, on the ball. Pascal Gross, he just looks like he's got all the time in the world. What a servant he has been for Brighton in all their Premier League years. As Lewis Dunk takes it off Igor and gives it back to the Brighton centre-back again, Barco. Oh, a little bit of pressure put on Barco. He didn't like that. Remember, he was the one that conceded the goal against Manchester City on Thursday night. Got caught out by Bernardo Silva and gave it to Foden, and Foden did the rest. Nearly had a similar situation there, but Brighton and Barco have escaped, and they've got it back again with Gross just outside his own penalty area. Joao Pedro beaten to it by Kelly, then forward by Igor and picked up by Joao Pedro. Kelly's gone back and is scrapping with him, but Joao Pedro has seen him off. Now he's cutting across the pitch from left to right, Joao Pedro, and with a drop of the shoulder opens it up, looks to clip it back into the far post for Adingra, headed away by Adam Smith for Bournemouth.
Yeah, Pedro doing well there, driving with the ball. Unfortunately for his team, it was more across the pitch than towards goal, and his pass was sort of comfortably dealt with by the Bournemouth defence. Quite an open game, end to end, I'd say. You know, quite a few opportunities, both sides very much with an attacking intent to their game today.
Bournemouth looking to provide the latest attack, because Alex Scott has got the ball for them 15 yards outside Brighton's penalty area. Back with Kluivert on the left-hand side. Now on the edge of the area, Senesi. Back into the box again. Kluivert clipping it up. Solanke waiting. Igor getting his head to it. Still not away for Brighton, as Ouattara headed it down. There were some shouts, mainly I think from the Bournemouth fans, for a handball, but it is safely in the hands from a Brighton perspective of their keeper Verbruggen.
It certainly is, and it was a promising move that for one moment you thought might have come to a little bit more than what it actually did. Ouattara finding himself in the opposition's 18-yard box, just unable to find one of his teammates with the headed back across goal.
We've got 4 games left, Franny, of this season, Bournemouth, and they only need to collect 2 points from them to get their best ever total in the Premier League, and that really is a mark of some tremendous work that Andoni Iraola's done.
Unbelievable, Chris. I mean, you know, they had to wait until their 10th Premier League game of the season before they got their first win, a 2-1 win at home over Burnley in late October. So it's incredible how they've done since then, and to consider that they could sort of finish higher with any more points than they have in the past is brilliant.
A fire across the box looking for Adingra. It was not too far away from him. I think you have to give some credit to Adam Smith there, who just gave Adingra a nudge but stayed on the right side of the law, and it just put Adingra off. Yeah,
those kinds of bits of defending are so clever and cute. I think he's a little bit too far ahead of him, the ball in from a fire, but it was promising from Brighton, but clever defending from Adam Smith just to block that run a little bit to make sure that he couldn't get onto the end of that delivery.
Roberto De Zerbi right now is rubbing his face in a manner that you'd do if you'd only had 3 hours sleep. He's sort of scrubbing away at the eyes down there below us on the left-hand side. That goal that we saw from Mickey van der Ven, or I told you about from Mickey van der Ven, that must have been, I haven't had confirmation of this, but that must have been disallowed, because it is now Spurs 0, Arsenal 3 in the North London derby.
Well, there'll clearly be some unhappy Spurs supporters, but Arsenal are just flying, aren't they? You know, they're certainly putting a push in for it now. Incredible scoreline, given that we haven't even reached half-time yet. 1
point their lead over Manchester City going into today's games. Remember, City at Nottingham Forest later. They played a game fewer, though, Manchester City, so if they win all their games, they will win the Premier League title. Adingra for Brighton, hooked up into the box on the left-hand side. It's bounced towards Gross. Kluivert wanted to go and engage before Gross did, and he got the ball. And his clearance has only gone as far as a fire for Brighton. Now Dunk seen a lot of the ball of fire actually. Gross, cross on the right hand side is brilliant, and Adingra's header difficult and over the top of the bar for a goal kick.
Yeah, again, you'd have to say, considering Brighton didn't start maybe the best, and they find themselves a goal behind, they're still looking to be a bit of a threat going forward, and it was a pretty decent ball into the box, wasn't it? But Adingra just unable to get above the ball and direct it, goal bound. But at 1-0, as we know, they're very much still in this game of football.
5 minutes to go in the first half. If you are interested, the Arsenal goals: an own goal from Hove for 1-0, 2-0 from Saka, 3-0 from Havertz. Here is Omani, who hasn't really had a sniff, has he, Franny, the young Irish forward, the under-21 international. Kelly beats him to the ball there, gets the ball back to his goalkeeper Travers.
Yeah, he would have liked obviously some more service, to see a bit more of the ball, a bit more joy on it, but he's having to do the work for his side, really just putting the Bournemouth defence under a bit of pressure.
Dunk back to his goalkeeper Verbruggen, who had to clear it away quickly because Enissanal was coming towards him. Then Senesi beats Omani in the air. Joao Pedro's touch was loose, allows Bournemouth to get the ball back. Pelly goes all the way back to his keeper Travers. They are 5 unbeaten at home in the Premier League, Bournemouth, since Manchester City won here at the end of February. Had draws against Sheffield United and Manchester United, wins against Luton and Everton in that time as well. Bournemouth throw on the right hand side. Smith is going to take it. 1-0 they lead. Adam Smith, one of the standout players of Bournemouth's Premier League years, really. 373rd appearance for the club today. He's 10th on their all-time list, Adam Smith. The next player in his sights is Ron Eyre, who Bournemouth fans will be aware of as Barco. The left back gives it back to Verbruggen, who was stretching to try and clear it away. He's giving it to Semenyo on the right. Semenyo, Onal's got time to turn and shoot, and Igor's blocked it, and actually Onal's offside. He didn't get himself back onside in time, the Turkey international. So free kick Brighton.
Well, Barco's just holding his hand up in apologies to his goalkeeper Bart Verbruggen. It wasn't a good ball from him back to his goalkeeper, but Verbruggen's attempted clearance wasn't that good either, and Unal found himself on the ball but in that offside position, as you mentioned. But just seeing them play out again, they've got 4 or 5 players in and around the 18-yard box trying to work their way out, and they're doing it pretty well on this occasion.
Igor trying a through ball. Joao Pedro's not going to get to that because Mark Travers was already the Bournemouth goalkeeper on the edge of his own box as he came racing out to kick it away. Collected by Brighton with Gilmour halfway inside his own half. Billy Gilmour, who's only just returned to the Brighton team today, having had that knee injury that he picked up with Scotland when on international duty in March. He's missed the last 7 Premier League games because of that, and some suspension that he had to serve as well. Brighton free kick just inside the Bournemouth half. And Franny Benali, 2.5 minutes of the first half to play. Do you think Roberto De Zerbi might be thinking about altering things at half time?
Yeah, well, we touched on the player and the qualities that he's got on his substitutes bench. I wouldn't be surprised at all if there was a change at half time, just to give his side a little bit of a swap around to try and strengthen them, get them back into this game. Bournemouth will be more than happy to go down the tunnel with a slender lead, and they'll be a little bit disappointed not to have extended that even more with the chances they've had.
Free kick Brighton. Barco takes it from just inside the Bournemouth half into the penalty area, away by Semenyo for Bournemouth. Hooks back in by Dunk. It's a dangerous one, and Adingra was at the back post. He couldn't make proper connections on it, and between a combination of Scott and Cook, they've managed to see the ball out for a Bournemouth goal kick. He was not too far away from getting something decent on that, was he, Simon Adingra?
No, and it was a decent ball. Dunk just lifting it back into the danger area, you would say, just inside the 6-yard box at the far post. But his teammates just unable to capitalise on the ball in.
You mentioned that Brighton bench, Franny. These are the players that are on Brighton's bench today. Webster, Enciso, Lallana, Modder, Welbeck, Baliba, Fati and Veltman, who all at stages this season would have considered themselves regular in the Brighton team, and yet there's 2 players on the pitch who've never started a Premier League game before that are in today from Roberto De Zerbi. Here's Adingra, who's run into a bit of trouble in the form of Senesi on the edge of the Bournemouth box. Semenyo's got it out to Enissanal on the right hand side. He's got the throw for Bournemouth. What do you make of the selection, Franny, from Roberto De Zerbi from that perspective today?
Well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, you know, clearly there's things still to play for, and whether there's some kind of point that he's trying to make at all, I'm not sure, but you look at those names and the experience and the quality that they've got, the games they've played, and as you rightly say, players that have been figuring in the team and starting lineups throughout the season, not starting today. Very interesting. It'd be interesting to see if he gets questioned on that, his team selection this afternoon at the end of the match, to get the thinking behind it.
He's got his hands in his pockets right now down on the touchline, Roberto De Zerbi. In fact, him and Andoni Iraola similar stances right now. Iraola with the peacoat jacket on, which is grey in colour, as Verbruggen gives it to Dunk. Out to the right side for a fire, and we are into 5 minutes of stoppage time at the end of the first half. Brighton trailing at Bournemouth by a goal to nil. Senesi with it just before the quarter hour mark. There haven't been any significant chances for Brighton to come back into this, but here come Bournemouth. Solanke from distance, held by Verbruggen, dives on top of the ball inside his 6-yard box.
Yeah, just saw a little glimpse of how dangerous Dominic Solanke can be in those areas. His 20 goals this season. You can see the belief and confidence he has in making an attempt at goal. It's well outside the box and comfortably taken, but he's had an outstanding season.
He has, and actually he's got a very good memory of playing against Brighton, or good memories I should say, because his first ever Premier League goal came against the Seagulls back in 2018 during his time with Liverpool. Here's João Pedro, Brighton's number 9. He feels he was fouled, no free kick given by Paul Tierney, so Bournemouth have it with Scott, who's hooked it down the right hand side, nobody there to chase onto it, so Igor gets the shout that he and Verbruggen have got a bit of time to consider their next move here.
You know, there wasn't a huge amount on for Alex Scott, but I'm a little bit perplexed as to why Unal couldn't have made a little bit more of an effort to chase that ball down, because it was just clipped into the channel in behind the Brighton defence. Verbruggen came out and dealt with it very, very comfortably. Could have been slightly different if he'd made one of those little runs, putting the ball and the goalkeeper under a little bit more pressure.
So Bournemouth 1, Brighton 0 in the North London derby, live on 5 Live right now. Spurs 0, Arsenal 3. You can listen to that on 5 Live over on BBC Sounds, as well as you can do here with us on Sports Extra. If you are going out on your travels, you can take us with you via the BBC Sounds app. Lewis Dunk and a fire, a short exchange of passes between those two Brighton players, and back with Verbruggen. Remember, we'll be back with the cricket after the conclusion of this game with Kevin Howes, hoping for some play between Warwickshire and Nottinghamshire. In Division 1 of the County Championship from 6:30 we've got live Women's Super League, Bristol City against Manchester City, and at the same time over on 5 Live we'll have 6:06 tonight with Chris and Robbie. 08085 909 693, where the lines will open up a little bit later on if you are wanting to talk about Bournemouth or Brighton today. That is your outlet to do so on this Sunday evening, as it will be later, as Unal is fouled by Igor, who was a little rash into that challenge, and it's left Unal in a crumpled heap just below us here on this near touchline. Free kick Bournemouth.
I think there's very little wrong with Unal, to be honest. I've got to say, I'm never keen on players falling to the floor and screaming, trying to win the free kick and get the foul. He's making his way back to his feet now. I'm sure he's absolutely fine. Yes, it was a bit of a foul, but he was certainly looking for it, is the best way to describe it.
Andoni Iraola has been spoken to here by Paul Tierney, so Paul Tierney's obviously been alerted by the fourth official, which is Michael Salisbury, that Iraola has said something about the challenge from Igor. So Paul Tierney's come over, but it's no more than a word for the Bournemouth manager, and the ball is back with the Cherries goalkeeper Mark Travers, who sends it long into the right channel for Semenyo. He won the header above Barco, taken on the chest by Unal, and then prodded out of play by Barco for a Bournemouth throw, and we've got about 90 seconds for Benali of the first half to play.
Yeah, it's been an interesting competition between these two teams this first half. Bournemouth just edging it, deservedly so in my opinion. Brighton still very much in it though. Be interesting, as you touched on, will there be any changes at half-time from Roberto De Zerbi?
Remember, in that fixture at the Amex between these two back in September, Brighton equalised right on the stroke of half-time, and it completely changed the direction of travel, because Brighton came out in the second half. They scored again immediately after the restart. You'll remember it well. Yeah,
Mitoma, wasn't it? Yeah, literally almost from the kickoff, 15-16 seconds, something like that.
Interestingly, Andoni Iraola was saying this week that 45 minutes, that first 45 minutes at the Amex Stadium, he feels is one of Bournemouth's best 45 minutes of their entire season. I don't think he'll put this this game in quite as high a bracket, but they've been solid, if not spectacular, Bournemouth, and there's 30 seconds to play of stoppage time.
Yeah, most definitely, and that's the challenge, I think, for any team, is to find that consistency.
Oh, a bit of a mix-up between Verbruggen and Igor. One was leaving it for the other. Goalkeeper took command in the end, but could do nothing but side-footed out of play with Semenyo close to him. Bournemouth throw, but they're in no hurry to take this.
One of those scenarios that could often go horribly wrong. If there's no communication, there's a mix-up between, are you going to deal with the ball or am I?
And there is the half-time whistle. So Bournemouth leading Brighton by 1-0, scored by Marcos Senesi, his 4th Premier League goal of the season, heading in from a corner from very short range indeed. And the response, Franny Benali from Brighton, probably not quite of the desired Roberto De Zerbi effects.
No, and clearly they haven't got into any rhythm or flow at all. They've looked dangerous on occasions. A fire's been bursting down the right-hand side a little bit, but no real open and clear-cut chances to trouble Mark Travers in the goalkeeper, in the goal for Bournemouth. So yeah, Bournemouth for me deserving the lead in what we've seen in these first 45 minutes.
And what about the goal that Bournemouth scored, the one from Marcos Senesi? A little messy from a Brighton perspective, or not a huge amount they can do?
Do you know, I think you'll always be disappointed from a set piece. Any set piece, any team that you concede from, you'll always look at how could we have stopped that, how could we have dealt with that better. But flip that round to Brighton's perspective, Bournemouth's perspective, they'll be happy with that. Great delivery, near post. They might have got a little bit of luck, the ball popping up, but Senesi was in the right place at the right time just to nod it home. And you'd have to say they've created some more clearer cut chances in this first half, so probably just edge it for me at 1-0.
Cheers, Franny, thank you very much. So Bournemouth heading for what would be a second win in a few days, and Brighton on the opposite side of that, heading for a second defeat in just a few days after being mauled by Manchester City on Thursday night at the Amex Stadium. Half-time here, Bournemouth 1, Brighton 0, but let's find out what's been going on in a dramatic North London derby and mop up some of the half-time reaction over on 5 Live as we join the team there, and we'll be back here on 5 Live Sports Extra for live second half commentary shortly.
And Havertz, the simplest of headers.
It was, yeah. I mean, the deliveries were good. I mean, especially that first one for the own goal at Højbjerg. It's not no fault for Højbjerg whatsoever. It was a really good delivery in a dangerous area. A lot of runners in that near post area. That caused the confusion. That can happen. But in the third goal that they conceded was another kind of ball into that area. No one really contesting Kai Havertz. 3 yards out. Vicario has to come for it. He claims he's fouled. He's pushed a little bit, tiny little bit, but not enough. Needs to be stronger, and he's the one that needs to come and deal with that.
Arsenal pushing for their first title in 20 years. Away at Tottenham, the first half could not have gone any better. They are 3-0 up, and as it stands, moving 4 points ahead of Manchester City at the top of the table. Half-time, Tottenham 0, Arsenal 3.
And Tottenham, Mark Schwarzer, have been their own worst enemies at times.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, their lack of care of the ball in possession, that's probably been their biggest downfall today. Passes more often than not, when they do find themselves in a decent area, a chance to really try and pressure Arsenal. That pass, and that first pass tends to be behind the player. We saw it was a clear one in that first half there. Maddison in a really good position. They were trying to put pressure on Arsenal, and the ball gets played in behind him. He slips and then tries to hook it out wide, and there's no one there. It just, too often it's broken down. And Arsenal, I think, have been pretty comfortable.
The set pieces, as bad as they've been defended, there's been a lot of cleverness from Arsenal. For example, I can remember a couple of occasions last season and this season where Ben White was penalised for fouls on goalkeepers. With Vicario there, it was almost like he knew exactly how much he could do without risking the goal being ruled out.
Yeah, that's right. So it was almost like a sort of jostling for position. That's what Ben White did. So there was no push, there was no nothing. It was more jostling for positions, and then he moves away. Like you said, his timing is perfect. It's not enough in any day or any book for a free kick to impede Vicario. Like I said, Vicario's got to do better. He's got to stay on his feet, and he's got to come out and deal with that cross, because the ball's headed from about 3 yards out.
You know, the one area where I really feel for Spurs is that they score, in inverted commas, the goal which is ruled out for offside. Now, what ends up, I mean, that it sort of felt at that period a goal was coming for Tottenham Hotspur. You know, Romero had just hit the post, they were having chances. The fact that ended up being offside and taking a while to check, that killed any momentum that they had.
A little bit, yeah. I think it was more about the penalty decision, wasn't it? There was Kulusevski goes down in the box, and then shortly out, like from that, him going down, lays it off to Maddison. Maddison then goes down. They're appealing for a penalty. That's the moment, I think, that really sort of put the nail in the coffin for Tottenham. They switched off for a moment, and then Arsenal just punished them, and Saka does really well. Ball over the top, takes a first really good touch, tucks it back inside, and the goal just opens up, and he just places in that bottom corner. Yeah, he puts a bit of pace on it, but he just places it with real finesse into that bottom left-hand corner, and it was a good goal, very good goal. And that was the one that I think really disrupted Tottenham.
And very little finesse about Son's finish, sadly, for Tottenham at the end of the half. Mark, Ali, thank you both very much for the time being. Tottenham 0, Arsenal 3. Half-time in the North London derby. We will see how Manchester City respond to that, even though there's 45 minutes still to go. Long way back for Spurs. City at Nottingham Forest at 4:30. We've got full commentary of that to come. On 5 Sports Extra, you can listen to full commentary now of Bournemouth-Brighton. Half-time, Henry Moran.
Bournemouth 1, Brighton 0, and Marcos Senesi's 4th goal of the season, nodding in from a corner, is the difference. Enes Unal really should have doubled that lead, but he scuffed wide after good work from Alex Scott down the right-hand side. Brighton, without a win in 6 weeks, have offered little. A run from Buonanotte, smothered by Travers in the Bournemouth goal, as good as it's got for them. Bournemouth on course to confirm their highest Premier League points total today. They lead Brighton at the break by 1-0.
Cyril Dessers scored the winner for Rangers in the early kick-off in Scotland. So Rangers victorious by 2-1 at St Mirren. They're now level on points with Celtic at the top, having played a game more. Celtic about to kick off at Dundee. We'll take you to Dens Park shortly, and we'll make our first trip of the day to the City Ground ahead of Forest against Manchester City. We'll do all of that after the news with Richard Foster.
Listen on BBC Sounds. This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
Ministers insist they are focused on the NHS despite the defection of the Conservative MP Dan Poulter to Labour. He works part-time as a doctor and says the health service isn't a priority for the Tories anymore. Charlie Rowley is a former special advisor to Theresa May and says the government isn't solely to blame.
We all love the NHS. We've all used it. We've all known someone who has had to use it. But I do think there is always a conversation about the management of the NHS, but that doesn't necessarily come from Whitehall and from government. There is a question about the management within the NHS and how it's run from the chief executive down, the internal structures and the internal workings of the NHS.
The leader of the Alba Party, Alex Salmond, says talks between his MSP Ash Regan and Humza Yousaf could get Scotland's First Minister out of a tight corner. Mr Yousaf's facing 2 no confidence votes after ending the SNP's power-sharing agreement with the Scottish Greens. New figures from the Home Office show 359 migrants were brought to Dover yesterday. They arrived in 8 boats. The Palestinian president says the US is the only country that can stop Israel attacking Rafah. Efforts are underway to arrange a truce between Israel and Hamas to safeguard the city in southern Gaza. More than 1 million people have fled there. And a second man has died in connection with an unusually strong batch of heroin circulating in North Devon. Police say 10 people have been taken to hospital.
Hello, I'm Greg James. He's Felix White.
Hello.
And that is England's greatest ever bowler, Jimmy Anderson.
Hello.
Felix, what can people expect to hear on Tailenders?
Loosely cricket-based chat, and we probe Jimmy about not meeting Dalai Lama.
Jimmy, what's your favourite thing about Tailenders?
I like hanging out with you guys and listening to you talk about cricket and then putting you right when you get everything.
Thanks for your support as ever. We also have some very special guests every now and then.
Stuart Broad. So they're running into bowl and I'm going, it's interesting, the skipper's bowling the top end and you're bowling this end because, you're going to get dropped, aren't you? So, love it.
That's Tailenders. Listen now on BBC Sounds.
Go well.
This is 5 Live Sport with Steve Crossman.
On 5 Live. Listen on BBC Sounds.
Second half commentary on the way from the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in the North London derby. Half-time, Spurs 0, Arsenal 3. On 5 Sports Extra, you'll be able to listen to the second half of Bournemouth 1, Brighton 0 in the race for the Scottish Premiership. Big win for Rangers earlier, 2-1 over St Mirren. Level on points then with Celtic, who stay top on goal difference. Celtic's game in hand gets underway in the next 2 minutes. Teams out at Dundee. Gavin Wallace.
They are indeed. Welcome then to Tayside. The team's out for match day 34. You're right, 4 goals of a swing it is. Celtic will know exactly what they need to do, and Rangers winning will provide that team top today. Last time out, Celtic won this fixture 7-1 at Parkhead. The other times this season they've won 3-0, and you have to go back to 2014 for the last time Celtic dropped points against Dundee. Cameron Carter-Vickers starts, as does Kyogo Furuhashi, and Adam Ida is on the bench for Dundee. Bakayoko and McCowan both start. Dundee, though, it's a chance to try and catch St Mirren, who are right or just above them by a couple of points or so. Can they get to Europe? Well, it starts here, and we're about to kick off in Tayside.
In the WSL, Arsenal drew 1-1 away to Everton. That means Manchester City have the chance to officially knock Arsenal out of the title race if they beat Bristol City later. Here's the Arsenal captain, Kim Little.
You know, we always go into every game and we want 3 points, so yeah, it's disappointing to concede that late in the game.
Russo in great form though. Talk about the positive, that goal, 4 in 3 for her now, but unfortunately just not enough today.
No, yeah, it was a great finish by Les, and I think we had opportunities to score in the first and second half to put it maybe further ahead, which we didn't do, which I think when we look back at the game, our quality maybe could have been a bit better in the final third. So yeah, we're disappointed with that today.
Manchester City up next. Is it a case of picking yourselves up and going again for that big clash with the team currently at the top of the league?
Yeah, of course. You know, our games against City are always great games, and we always find it hard going away from home against them. So we'll look to go there and to get the win and to try and change that.
Some rugby games in Super League and Rugby Union getting underway as we speak. In the Gallagher Premiership, Newcastle versus Sale has just kicked off. 15 defeats from 15 games for Newcastle this season. Also Gloucester against Exeter in the Super League. Hull FC have won 1 game this season, are at home to Leeds Rhinos. In the tennis, let's go back live to the Madrid Open and Russell Fuller.
Carlos Alcaraz has won 22 matches in a row on Spanish clay since the start of 2022, and here he is walking into the Manolo Santana Stadium, hoping that his 23rd victim will be the Brazilian Thiago Zajboc. Earlier there were wins for Andrei Rublev, Elena Rybakina, but defeat for Holger Rune to the Dutchman Talon Griekspoor.
Let's go to the Crucible next, the second round of the World Snooker Championships. Jamie Broughton.
And 2 former world champions are in action this afternoon, Steve. John Higgins, the 4-time winner, resumed tied at 4 frames all with Mark Allen, and it's Higgins that's made the good start. He took the opening frame with a 75 break to go 5-4 up. On the other table, the 2015 winner, Stuart Bingham, is continuing his match against Jack Lazowski. Bingham is 5-3 up in that one. Earlier today, Stephen Maguire booked his place in the quarterfinals with a 13-9 winner of the 2005 winner, Sean Murphy. And Maguire now plays David Gilbert. And the 7-time champion, Ronnie O'Sullivan, is 5-3 up against Ryan Day after the first session of their second round match. They continue at 7 o'clock tonight.
In the County Championship, Division 1, Worcestershire are 202 for 1 in reply to Somerset's first innings score of 309 for 9. That is the only County Championship action going on right now because of the bad weather. We'll have full commentary of Nottingham Forest against Manchester City from 4:30. Correspondent John Murray is there for us. Big game for both of them, John.
Yes, it most certainly is. And as you can imagine, there's a real feeling of indignation about the place after what happened a week ago and everything, all of the fallout from that's occurred over the course of the past week. I don't know why I did, but for some reason I had to look at Nuno Espirito Santo's programme notes just in case that he shed any light on things. And as you know, they are famously brief. They're only 4 paragraphs long, and I think probably the second paragraph where he says, "Today gives us another opportunity to come together and fight for a positive result in front of our fans for the penultimate time at home this season." So it's really more what's not said there, I think.
What was the first sentence? Welcome to our supporters for the Premier League game today at home to Manchester City.
You've got that almost word perfect, Steve.
Delighted with that. Chris Waddle's alongside John for commentary. Hi, Chris.
Hiya.
I understand there's a lot of indignation for Nottingham Forest fans, and it's quite easy when it's not your club to not feel the same way. But what they want to do is stay up, and to do that, they've got to put it aside somehow, haven't they?
Yeah, they've got to push it to one side and think of the results. They've got a decent run in, let's be honest. Part of this game today, Manchester City, just an extraordinary team. So anything they get from today is a bonus, and they've got to focus on the rest. And listen, whatever happens, rules and with the point deductions and whether get some back, whatever's going to happen, just get on with it. Just play your football and, be ready to any chance you can capitalise on anything, take it.
But what I think it will mean, Steve, is that we will have some atmosphere here at kick-off.
Yeah. And the atmosphere there is massive. And we've seen that in previous seasons as well, Chris, for Nottingham Forest. It is true of every team, but it is also true that the City Ground can be a very, very powerful place, I think.
It is. It's very, very close to the players. it's a wonderful stadium. I've always liked coming here, playing here. But listen, if they get themselves up, Man City, seen it, done it, bought a T-shirt. Let's be honest, they've played in hostile grounds and they've played in atmospheres probably a lot bigger than this. Let's be honest. And it's all about that today. Can they catch Man City on a bad day? Because 9 times out of 10, if you're playing this game, you'd back City every time. So for me, it's Forest are going to have to play a very disciplined, well-organised game. And
welcome back to Vitality Stadium for live second half commentary of Bournemouth against Brighton. If you want to continue to Tottenham against Arsenal in that North London derby, which is fast heading for one conclusion, it seems. Spurs 0, Arsenal 3 at the break. You can do on 5 Live, and obviously both of these games, Tottenham, Arsenal, Bournemouth, Brighton, via BBC Sounds as well. And of course later on 5 Live we'll have Nottingham Forest against Manchester City from 4:30. Chris Wise and Franny Benali with you at Vitality Stadium. Changes afoot from a Brighton perspective. Mark O'Mahony, who was making his first Premier League start today, it's only lasted 45 minutes. He is off at half-time for the Seagulls, and the vastly experienced Danny Welbeck is on in his place, and Bournemouth are going to get this second half underway with them leading Brighton by 1-0, a goal from Marcos Senesi 13 minutes in from a Bournemouth corner, a blow of Paul Tierney's whistle. Away we go. So Bournemouth starting us off, going from right to left towards the Steve Fletcher stand over towards our left hand side in this second half, as the ball is immediately sent forward out of the reach of Solanke into the hands of Verbruggen, the Brighton goalkeeper. So the teams for you: Travers in goal for Bournemouth, Smith, the goal scorer, Senesi, Kelly and Ouattara, Scott and Cook as the two holding midfielders, Semenyo and Kluivert either side of Solanke and Unal, who have almost played as a 2 up top. Solanke just playing a little off Enes Unal. And for Brighton now, with that Welbeck change for O'Mahony, Verbruggen in goal, Afire, Igor, Dunk and Barco, Gilmour and Gross, Adingra, Buonanotte, Joao Pedro, and Welbeck now leading the line ahead of Mark O'Mahony, who is off as a sub. Franny Benali, what are you expecting from this second half from both?
Well, Brighton as the visitors and the team behind has certainly got to up things and get back into this game, and I think the substitution from De Zerbi is a big factor in that, bringing Danny Welbeck on for O'Mahony.
Solanke sending it through, Kluivert away for 2. Oh, he's hit the side netting, and he really has to do more. He's got his shirt pulled up in his mouth at the moment, Justin Kluivert. Andoni Iraola, I was watching him down on the touchline as well. He can hardly believe that Justin Kluivert's missed that, but he has, and it's still Bournemouth 1, Brighton 0. But that is a let-off for Brighton.
Oh, it certainly is. He was literally on the corner of the 6-yard box with just the goalkeeper to beat. There was some great one-touch football to get him in, but didn't even hit the target.
Now Brighton down the other end, springing into action. Adingra is on the edge of Bournemouth's box, feigns to shoot, tries to cut back in field. He's got Alex Scott there with him. It's broken to Gilmour, who didn't get enough on his pass sideways towards Pascal Gross, but Bournemouth relinquished possession immediately. What a quick start to this second half.
Well, from the chances that Bournemouth have had so far in this game, they'll be kicking themselves if they let Brighton back into it. They've had the chances to extend the lead, haven't taken them yet.
Here's Pascal Gross, 15 yards outside Bournemouth's penalty area. A switch of players. He sends it to Lewis Dunk towards the right-hand side. Buonanotte came short. He's given it to Gilmour into the feet of Gross. Now wide to Adingra, who fancies running at Smith into that near post area. Travers plunges on top of it inside his 6-yard box, the Bournemouth goalkeeper.
I don't think that was the worst of balls in, you know. It was a pretty decent ball in. There's 3 Brighton players in the box. Just as we're seeing a little glimpse of the replay that Kluivert had, shooting left-footed. He'll be certainly disappointed with his effort. Slightly scuffed it, didn't he, Franny, as well? Well, the reaction to it, as you said, sort of like lifting his shirt and biting his shirt. He knows it was a good chance. He would have expected to have done better, to have added to his 8 goals that he scored this season.
6 of those 8 have come in the Premier League for Justin Kluivert, which incidentally is the same that his dad managed in his time with Newcastle United. Patrick, one of the great strikers of his particular era, is Enes Unal, who's up front for Bournemouth today. First Premier League start for him. Semenyo off the right-hand side, back into the box. Here's Unal. He's lost the ball underneath his feet, the Turkey international. That's another big chance for Bournemouth, and for him as well, because remember, he had a sizable one in the first half too, Enes Unal. And Brighton retrieved the ball again with a sense of relief.
Yeah, his touch just let him down, didn't it? It was good play. He fed Semenyo on the right-hand side, received the ball back from him.
Cliver off down the left-hand side for Bournemouth again. They're running at Brighton in numbers here. Cross it goes, off Dunk, and deflects up and behind for a Bournemouth corner. 4 minutes into the second half. Bournemouth 1, Brighton 0. Franny Benali.
Yeah, bright start from the home side. Opened them up a little bit. But frustration for Unal. Firstly, that touch when he received the ball from Semenyo, and then moments later where Cliver looked to pick him out across the 6-yard box, but he just couldn't find his teammate, which would have been certainly an easy opportunity for him had it got reached him.
So Lewis Cook from the left-hand side with the Bournemouth corner, deep towards the far post, but Bruggen was stranded on his line. It's cleared away as far as Cliver has hooked it over his head back to the edge of the box. Dunk has headed it away, but actually Cliver, when sending it forward, was caught himself by Adingra, and referee Paul Tierney has given Bournemouth a free kick here, about halfway inside Brighton's half.
Yeah, I think it's one of those ones that when you're the player with your back to goal and watch eyes on the ball, his challenge fully focused on that, but Adingra trying to win it has obviously just caught him in that motion as he's struck the ball.
How far outside of the penalty area would you say this is, Franny? Just on the eye?
I've got to say sort of 30, just over 30 plus, I'd say.
Yeah, so just about within the capabilities of somebody if they want to have a go here.
Well, it would have to be some strike, wouldn't it? I mean, if this does go in from this range, it would have to be something special, I think, to beat the keeper from this range.
They're teeing it up, Bournemouth, as if they're going to have a go here at least. Enes Unal is there, so is Ouattara, who has stepped away from it. It's going to be Enes Unal who's hit it relatively well for Bruggen. I thought he'd lost that for a moment. It went down towards it, sort of low knee height for Verbruggen. It slipped out of his grasp for a moment, but he got his hands back on it pretty quickly, the Brighton keeper.
He did, and I guess the good thing about it was straight at him, wasn't it? Didn't have to move his feet either to the left or right. We now strike, but it bounced awkwardly, as you said, Chris, just in front of him, and he just mishandled it for a second.
Sorry, Franny, I was going to
just those little things just sometimes just creep a little bit of negativity in. You know, even just a little fumble by the goalkeeper. The supporters pick up on that, and it can spread amongst the team a little bit, that uncertainty.
I was just going to say that watching the replay as well, he lost the ball for Bruggen, and he caught it in between his two thighs. So he did well to sort of hold on to it with his legs rather than his hands in the end.
Whatever it takes.
Exactly. Here's Cliver for Bournemouth, who have been very positive in the first 7 minutes of this second half. Ouattara on the byline, he's kept it in as well. Far post, header back across goal and in. Enes Unal for 2-0 Bournemouth. And it's a brilliant header from the Turkish international. He's missed a couple of big chances in this game, but he has finished that perfectly back across goal. Powerful header, opposite side of Verbruggen to his right-hand side. And Bournemouth, who've missed chances at the start of the second half, now take one. Bournemouth 2, Brighton 0.
And it's a good goal, isn't it? It's none more than what Bournemouth deserve, the way they've approached this game today. They've had those chances, as you say, but they've started the second half really, really well, haven't they? And this time the opportunity comes from the left flank. It's a good bit of play. They've got numbers forward. And Unal, who starts off in the D outside the box initially, and then it's kept in and it's just lofted up towards the far post. The Brighton fenders don't get tight enough to Unal, and that kind of ball into the box is the sort of delivery and service that he would be looking for. It's a strong, powerful header up and over Verbruggen, and it extends the home side's lead to 2-0.
Do you know what, Franny? I'm watching a replay there. He doesn't actually have to move Enes Unal. It's not like it's a clever piece of movement. It's a high ball towards the back post, and Igor looks over his shoulder and is expecting Barco to be there, and he wasn't, so it was a free header.
Yep, it'll be disappointing from Brighton's perspective for sure.
Fire chasing after one down the right-hand side, clipping the heels of Ouattara, so free kick to Bournemouth, who now have this 2-0 lead against Brighton. And once more, it is Roberto De Zerbi. How many times have we seen this? Who is talking to, I don't know if he's talking to his backroom staff, he's talking to his players. He talked to anybody that will listen down there, and his body language is negative at the moment from the Italian.
Yeah, and he's not going to be happy with what he's seeing this afternoon. He's put Danny Welbeck on to try and change that. And Danny's making his 200th Premier League. Well, it's not his start, but it would have been had he started today. But he hasn't been able to make an impact yet. He's got other quality players on the bench, and I'm sure he'll be thinking about making another change or two just to try and get his team back into it somehow.
And to give Bournemouth their credit, they have shifted from a gear 3 into a gear 4 at the start of this second half, despite having the 1-0 lead that they have now extended to 2. And they've got a free kick here as well, which Ouattara is going to take, not before readjusting both of his socks, which are pulled up to knee height. And the Burkina Faso international, who's been with the club for more than 2 years now, former Lorient player in France, is going to take this free kick. Bournemouth have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players all lingering in around the edge of Brighton's penalty area. Ouattara, left-footed across the edge of the 6-yard box, dunk very calmly with his chest, guides it back to Verbruggen.
Very composed, wasn't it? And it was a word that sprung into my mind immediately that you just said, calmly. Chris, there's lots of bodies and it's a whipped in ball. He's close to his goalkeeper, but he just popped up off his chest into his goalkeeper's hands. Good play. Brighton really do now need to find their creative edge that they've been lacking in this game and have been lacking in recent weeks. Buonanotte was a stray of Adingra, his attempted pass down the left wing, and Bournemouth pinch it back with Semenyo. Lost though by Anal. Forward it goes towards Adingra again, headed out of play by Kelly. Brighton throw, 2/3 of the way inside Bournemouth's half on the left. They've taken it quickly with Barco. Back for Gilmour again, 10 minutes into this second half. Gilmour to Welbeck, edge of the box. Welbeck poked on to Gross, looking for Welbeck again, nearly a good one too, but Lewis Cook went with the run of Danny Welbeck and he stabs it out of play for a Brighton throw. Yeah, good play from defensive play from Lewis Cook, just staying with the runner. If he hadn't attracted him, Welbeck may well have received that reverse pass.
It's a foul by Kluivert on Afire, who is immediately apologising to the 21-year-old Brighton player who began the season on loan with Hearts in Scotland's Premiership. He's got the free kick here, Odelega Afire. Kluivert's been booked as well for the challenge.
Yeah, and I'd say it's one of those challenges that referees will book. He sort of lunged in a little bit, didn't really win the ball. Kluivert caught more of Afire than the ball, and in my opinion, I wholly agree with Paul Tierney issuing him a yellow card for that.
Well, we know there is quality in the boots of Pascal Gross, but how Brighton need that quality from a set piece here. 2-0 down to Bournemouth. Free kick 5 yards in from the touchline, deep inside Bournemouth's half. On this near right hand side, and Pascal Gross with his arms draped down by the side. You can see the tattoo on his right arm, which he now raises into the air, the Brighton player. Right footed, edge of the box, headed away by Solanke across goal to the opposite side. Barco, deep ball back in, Dunk went for it. Kelly nodded it away for Bournemouth. Dunk ended up on the ground in there, still not away. Back in by Gross. Scott's clearance with his head. Gilmour on the edge of the penalty area. Too much on the pass for Barco, was struggling to keep it in play, but he's retrieved it well from Semenyo, sliding to get it, then his cross into the box, down by Kelly, picked up by Solanke for Bournemouth, who has got away from a couple of challenges here. He's been fouled, but the possession and the advantage is with Bournemouth as Kluivert works it out to the right hand side. Semenyo 5 yards outside the box, into the area, Kluivert shoots, Verbruggen makes the save low.
Great counter-attack, it was fast, it was swift, it was decisive. And in 2 or 3 passes they find themselves with a shot on target. The game's just come to life a little bit more.
Where are these 2 goals that Brighton need coming from? Because they have only scored 1 in their last 4 Premier League games, and actually that one wasn't even scored by a Brighton player. It was an own goal.
Yeah. I can't see it coming at this moment in the game, Chris, honestly.
Barco's cross, Kelly left it, but knew that Senesi was there, and ahead of Buonanotte, sweeps it out of play. Brighton throw, far side in front of their visiting fans. 2-0 they trail Bournemouth here, but they're the ones who've got to throw.
John, we touched on their lack of goals and how they've been struggling to pick up some wins. You alluded to the injury list first half, Chris, didn't you? When you got the names of like Lamptey, Stupinian, Milner, Matoma, March, Ferguson, all key players that could be called upon that aren't figuring.
Joao Pedro shooting powerfully on the edge of the penalty area, blocked back with Welbeck. Here's Adingra, tries to curl it in. Travers, great save, outstretched arm, flicking it over the bar, corner to Brighton.
Good attempt at goal, good save. Mark Travers getting a big, strong hand to it. Or did he?
Flag's actually gone
offside.
up, I think. Yeah,
Offside.
Adingra offside when he retrieved the ball. So,
but it's a good effort. You know, that's what Brighton have got to do a little bit more.
Does have 6 Premier League goals this season. Simon Adingra, he is Brighton's second top scorer in all competitions, but it has been a couple of months since his last goals came against Sheffield United. He got a couple, but Bournemouth are the ones who have scored here. Senesi relatively early on in the first half, Venice now even earlier in the second. Bournemouth 2, Brighton 0. The former Premier League defender Franny Benali, part of our commentary team here on 5 Live Sports Extra.
Yeah, and Roberto Zerbi's got his substitutes out, they're warming up. Wouldn't be surprised to see one or two of faces making that change at 2-0 down. Got to try something, just can't see where a goal's coming from at this moment in time. It's a good effort from Adingra. A few moments ago, albeit offside. Sorry, Chris.
Just going to say a foul was on there for Kundo Buonanotte for a Brighton free kick. Here goes a fire in field for Joao Pedro with the orange boots. Now Barco's got the orange hair, and he's shot from distance. It's hit Welbeck, then it's hit Senesi, and it's dropped to the edge of the penalty area where Gross picks it up for Brighton, tries to bend it in. Ouattara, it's hit him in the face. Anywhere will do for Bournemouth from that perspective. Out for a Brighton throw as we go beyond the hour mark, and Brighton need to find 2 goals if they're going to get any form of positive result from this game. It's back on the halfway line with Igor, the Brazilian, the former Fiorentina defender. Here's Barco. Clever pass into Gross's feet. Gross wide to a fire. They're looking a bit more positive now, Brighton. A fire running it. Ouattara teed up for Gross, chipped up to the far post. Pedro's header over the top of the crossbar, and by a distance as well from the Brazilian.
Yeah, never going to trouble Mark Travers, that one, but you know, it's better from Brighton, but the quality is just not there really. You know, they look a threat at times in certain areas and positions, but it doesn't look like the players themselves really have that belief or confidence or conviction to really make it count in certain key areas at the moment. You know, they look like a side that are sort of low on confidence and 2 goals behind in a game of football. There's no real spark in their team at the moment.
Tony Bloom and Paul Barber both here today. Brighton chief executive and owner, of course. Tony Bloom, Buonanotte taking it off Gilmour, running at Bournemouth's defence. Buonanotte, left-hand side of Adingra, cross in the middle, out of the reach of Welbeck. Wasn't too much wrong, I don't think, with the delivery from Simon Adingra into a dangerous area. Now the play it goes. Might have been offside actually again, Adingra there.
Yeah, quite possibly. You know, clearly VAR would have had a look at it, but again, getting into key areas, good moments. Is the quality of the delivery quite what it should be? Are enough players getting in the right areas in the box? Maybe just, you could question both those points. Could be a little bit better, I think, Chris. It's got to be, to get back into this game.
2-0, they trail against Bournemouth, these 2 old foes, Bournemouth and Brighton. It's their 110th league meeting today. First league game just over 100 years ago, actually. December 1923 in the old Division 3 South. Here's Enissanao for Solanke, played it at his feet in the end, Enissanao, so there wasn't much Solanke could do about it. And Brighton had the ball back again just outside their penalty area.
Well, it ended what was a very, very promising build-up with some wonderful 1- and 2-touch football from Bournemouth. They played past the Brighton press, but just fell short with Ronaldo's final pass, trying to find his striking partner Solanke.
That first ever Bournemouth-Brighton game, by the way, that was when Bournemouth were Bournemouth and Boscombe Athletic, as they used to be. Brighton 1-0, played them a week later, lost 5-0. Such was the way of things back then. You played each other in quick succession, didn't you? Here is Gilmour for Brighton. High ball out to Welbeck on the right-hand side. Did well to trap it. He's got it at the byline. High on this right wing for Brighton, back for a fire, edge of the box Gilmour, swings it in, right-footed, headed away by Kelly for Bournemouth, and then on its way further upfield by Semenyo, but only back into Brighton possession again. They are trailing 2-0, and we've played 64 minutes at Vitality Stadium.
Yeah, and you've got to say Brighton are just trying to forced the pressure a little bit more, asking a few questions of Bournemouth defensively, but everything that's come into the box they've dealt with well. Lloyd Kelly on that last occasion, Senesi, they look solid at the back there. Travers behind them, doing what he needs to do when he's called into action. With no real obvious clear-cut threat of scoring a goal from Brighton's perspective.
Solanke, Bournemouth's leading scorer, leading the charge as he carries it forward through the centre of the park. To the right for Ennison now, into that near post. Out of the reach of Solanke. Collected up, scooped up by Bart Verbruggen. He has kept 3 clean sheets in his past 8 now Premier League appearances, having not been able to do so today. The former Anderlecht goalkeeper, Dutch under-21 international. And these two that began the afternoon a point between each other in the Premier League table. 1 point is going to be 4 here if things stay as they are, and both are preparing changes, and actually both the number 10s are coming on. I can see for Bournemouth and Julio Enciso for Brighton, so we're going to see some alterations from both Andoni Iraola and Roberto De Zerbi very shortly. Welbeck, who did come on at half-time for Brighton, has got it back again from a 1-2, and he played with Gross, now a fire. First Premier League start for him today. Joao Pedro getting away from Cliver. It's got to the byline. Across it goes, out of the reach of Welbeck. It was too fast for him. Barco's kept it in on the opposite side, the left. He sends a low cross in. Kelly down on one knee as he clears for Bournemouth. And a fire picks it up again, but he's 20 yards outside Bournemouth's penalty area. Gilmour with the change of direction. That was really nice. Adingra, Gilmour. Adingra nearly worked it. It was a double 1-2, but it was just that last pass, Franny, that didn't work.
It was, yeah. And they've just conceded a foul through their full-back. And it's Barco giving the free kick away. But it was good play, as you say. Nice one-touch football, good movement. But just prior to that, it was Joao Pedro who did so well initially, driving in, but his final ball across the box was just overhit with too much power to enable one of his teammates to get on the end of it.
Right, those changes then that we alluded to. Pick my pen up, I've dropped on the floor. First one is a Brighton change, so it's going to be Simon Adingra, who is departing here for Julio Enciso, who's only recently come back into the Brighton fold after a nasty injury. Roberto De Zerbi saying this week that he still can't manage 90 minutes just yet, the Paraguayan international. Still only 20 years old, Enciso, so there is a lot of potential there for sure. As Barco is fouled by Semenyo, and now the Bournemouth change. I thought they'd make the change immediately, Bournemouth, but maybe that's just a little smart move from Andoni Iraola. Waited to see what sort of shape Brighton were going to take before proceeding with his change, which he's going to do now, and he's taking off Ennison now. So one of the Bournemouth goal scorers getting a nice reception from the home supporters as he leaves the pitch, takes the hairband out of his long dark hair, Ennison now, and applauds the crowd as he comes off for Ryan Christie.
Yeah, he'll be delighted that he ended up getting on the goal scoring sheet with a wonderful header back across goal to give his team the 2-0 lead, accepting the warm applause, clapping the fans back. And Bournemouth making that change. You may have heard over the loudspeaker Ryan Christie coming on. We'll just see how that affects the change in the setup. You imagine Solanke would now maybe go as the striker, the out-and-out striker up front.
And I imagine that Alex Scott will push forward from a deeper role in midfield to go and play behind him, and Christie will go and fill that familiar slot alongside Lewis Cook, because those two have been absolutely brilliant for Bournemouth this season in those holding midfield roles, Lewis Cook and Ryan Christie.
Yes, it's interesting how, you know, players and individuals can click as a little partnership, can't they? Whether it's a centre-half partnership, that midfield central partnership, strikers, whatever it might be, a full-back and a winger. You know, you just get on the same wavelength of another player sometimes, and they've certainly done it so well, as you say.
Here's Scott sending it out to the right for Semenyo, very accurate. Semenyo in the box, right-footed shot, deflected, I think. No, goal kick given. Semenyo completely disagrees. He is saying that you've missed one there, Paul Tierney. Goal kick has been given.
Well, his reaction is one either out of it's a clear corner, or Paul Tierney is not pleased with the way that Antoine Semenyo has spoken to him after that decision.
Well, from here, did it look like a corner to you? Because it did to me.
It's difficult. Sometimes you don't see that little slight touch that you experience up close in the moment. But from a distance, sometimes it doesn't always get picked up. I mean, if it wasn't a deflection, it would have been a pretty poor shot at target. We're just getting a little chance of seeing it again. Yeah, it does. It's very clear when we see it again.
Yeah.
The ball did come off Barco for a corner.
Yeah, and it wasn't even like a brush of the shin. I mean, it's properly moved direction, the shot from Semenyo off Barco's shin. But anyway, on we go. Bournemouth still have the 2-0 lead. Brighton in possession on the halfway line. Here on 5 Live Sports Extra this afternoon. Right now you can listen to the North London derby. Spurs do have one back against Arsenal. Tottenham 1, Arsenal 3. Welbeck and Ciso. Buonanotte from the edge of the box. Blocks and Ciso wide. He's unlucky, and Ciso. He got plenty of thrust behind his effort. He's smiling, but I imagine there's a bit of a grimace involved as well. He's nearly come off the bench and provided Enciso.
It's a good chance for Brighton just to get something back into this game. I think Enciso's got more time than he actually realises when it drops there. He's under a little bit of pressure from Senesi behind him, but it's on his left foot. He's just stretching a little bit and sliding in, and it goes the wrong side of the post from Brighton's perspective. But again, another chance has gone begging.
He scored a brilliant goal here last season, actually, Enciso. Here's Semenyo offering his power and skill set down the right, cross into the penalty area. Semenyo has gone down. Barco was sliding in on him. The ball has gone out to the opposite side of the pitch. Paul Tierney does not want play to continue for now, because he perhaps is getting a message in his ear that there might be a penalty check here. Franny Benali.
Well, it's certainly going to be interesting, and Semenyo is on the floor just off the edge of the pitch. He drove towards the byline. Barco has lunged in to try and block the cross. There's not a huge amount of contact, I don't think. I'd be very surprised if they actually give it. There's a little bit of contact after the ball's been played into the box, but not enough for a penalty for me.
The only thing I guess Franny, is that from Barco's perspective is that should he be challenging like that, because it ended up being less of a block and more of an impact challenge.
It's a good point, Chris. Yeah, most definitely he was late to try and stop the cross. Most definitely I'd agree with you there. So yeah, it's questionable. It was a desperation challenge.
It was. But they've had a quick look at it, VAR. They're happy that it doesn't meet the threshold in terms of a clear and obvious error, so play continues with Bournemouth leading Brighton by 2-0, and they've just taken the ball back off Brighton again in the middle of their own half. And here is Kluivert down the left-hand side, cuts back inside, right-footed cross held by Verbruggen, didn't have the height on it, comfortable for the Brighton goalkeeper to claim it. And now off they go, Brighton, running from the centre of the pitch with Gross, who isn't the quickest, but others certainly are around him, as Gilmour helps it out to that left-hand side. João Pedro's got it. João Pedro cuts it back. Gilmour in the box, shoots right-footed again. Another Bournemouth block. It was Christie this time. And then Kluivert with a lovely flick to get it to Solanke. Kluivert's continued his run. Solanke's tried to feed it through. Kluivert's gone over. He feels that he was tripped by Dunk. There's all sorts of questions being asked by Bournemouth players about potential Brighton challenges at the moment. That's not a free kick either. And Brighton have the ball again. A little frantic Franny Benali. Here's Enciso. Just hold that thought for a moment, because every time I want to throw to you, Franny, it's Brighton or Bournemouth that are offering attack. It's Brighton doing it right now. Gilmour into the feet of Welbeck, back to goal. Senesi had a little bit of his shirt, and Enciso chopping it onto his right foot, curling it. Oh, how unlucky is that from Enciso? From outside the box, he's bent that. Travers was scrambling, panicking, jumping to his left-hand side. Can't have missed by much.
No, not at all, and it'll be interesting to see actually how close that was. I think you can just tell from the way that Mark Travers was trying to reach for it. He had his right hand failing in the air. It looked like it was just going to fly into the top corner, but just again another ball that just goes wide of the post. It was a great effort from Enciso though.
Wasn't too dissimilar actually to the goal that he scored against Manchester City, you might remember last season, which has actually ended up being nominated for the Pushkash Awards for the best goal. Here's João Pedro for Brighton in the Bournemouth box, still going, chopped it back inside, deflected away and over the top of the crossbar, and lots of Bournemouth players immediately going to Adam Smith, because he was the one who got himself in the way that time.
Yep, important block at the right time. João Pedro doing well, looked like he just got away from the Bournemouth defenders, and there was 2 or 3 around him. I think it was Smith in the end that just gets the all-important touch.
Chance of Albion from the away supporters. We are 74 minutes in. There's more Brighton changes coming here. So who is coming off? Odeluga of fire. So it is the end of the afternoon for the 21-year-old on his first Premier League start. Joel Veltman is going to be his replacement, so that will be a like for like, one would imagine, at right back for Brighton. And Adam Webster is also coming on here too, so who's going to come off for him? Igor. So it's interesting changes from Roberto De Zerbi. He's taken off a right back and a centre half to try and change the impact of the game here.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, he's got to try something to shift the momentum of this game. They've had a few half chances. They looked dangerous on a couple of occasions, but just still can't find the back of the net.
Barco, corner from the right for Brighton, and Welbeck tried something fancy, had his back to goal, tried to deviate it into the corner, and it's off his boot and behind for a Bournemouth goal kick. Bournemouth 2, Brighton 0, Franny Benali.
I think you just sort of, upon reflection, depending the outcome of today and ultimately the end of the season, a club like Brighton, as outstanding as they've been, you think, what has the impact of injuries had upon them, playing European football had upon them? Sometimes we've seen it in the past, it can deter from the domestic league campaign and the impact it has on how you can perform and the results that you get.
And it's reflected really in this stat more than anything else. If you look at this stage of last season compared to now, there's an 11-point difference between Brighton's total right now after 33 games compared to that of last season. But there was no Europe, as you say, last season. They had the likes of Alexis McAllister, Moises Caicedo were in the team as well, and they weren't dealing with, as you rightly point out, Franny, this long injury list that it feels like Roberto De Zerbi's been battling with for a number of months now. As a Bournemouth throw on the far right hand side is taken, goes back to Lloyd Kelly and across to Senesi, the Bournemouth defender. Now Kluivert away from Buonanotte and from Gross on the halfway line, and he's almost up to the edge of the box. He's got it to Ouattara. Ouattara got it across the area. Solanke on the turn. Was there a handball in there? Not spotted by Paul Tierney. And Ciso. Now Smith from the edge of the area. Smith shoots over the top of the bar. Goal kick.
Well, when the ball drops to Dominic Solanke in that kind of area, just 7 or 8 yards out, you think there's a real possibility of a goal threat here. But with respect, when Adam Smith picked it up and he was looking to score, there was a little bit of maybe a hand to ball or a ball to hand from Solanke's little effort. But again, it's one of those little deflections off the leg. I think was it Dunk or Webster?
It was Dunk, yeah. Dunk yeah. Again. We had one in the first half, didn't we, where it hit his hand, but that was deemed to be acceptable.
But no penalty, correct decision, I think.
Still Spurs 1, Arsenal 3, the last time we heard from the North London derby. Over on 5 Live right now. Nottingham Forest against Manchester City to come from 4:30 on 5 Live. We'll have live commentary of that massive game for both ends of the Premier League table. As Bournemouth make their latest change, here comes Max Aarons, former Norwich man who has missed a big chunk of the season because of a hamstring problem. He's going to get some minutes here for Alex Scott. Hasn't quite had the impact today, Alex Scott, that I have seen in other games from the Guernsey-born youngster, but nevertheless an impact that has been fruitful for Andoni Iraiola's team today.
And a few negative comments that we're just hearing from the crowd around us as well, the home supporters, a little bit unhappy at that change. Yes, he's a wonderful talent, but I'd agree with you, Chris, he has been a little bit quiet today.
Webster goes back to Verbruggen, the Brighton goalkeeper. 78 minutes on the clock. Brighton, who, remember, have only scored 1 goal in their last 4 Premier League games, and actually only 4 in their last 8 if you want to extend it a little bit further. So goals just have not been forthcoming for Roberto De Zerbi's team in recent weeks, and here, with time moving away from them, they need to find 2 against Bournemouth. Senesi in the first half, and Nall in the second for the Cherries. And here is Enciso with the slightly dyed blonde hair for Brighton, for Buonanotte. And now the tall frame of Lewis Dunk gives it to Buonanotte. Gilmour, now Gross moving it to the right hand side now. Brighton moving deeper into Bournemouth territory as well. Veltman, who's come off the bench in this second half. Gross and Ciso tried to get it round the corner, stopped by Ouattara. And a play for a Brighton throw.
They've got to find a goal very, very soon, as you say, to give them any kind of hope of getting something from this game. Because at the moment, it's certainly the home side that are the stronger, the more dominant, created the better chances.
But Enciso's definitely livened Brighton up, hasn't he, since they've come on? He's given them that creative element they were lacking. This is João Pedro, their leading scorer, on the left side of the penalty area here with those bright orange boots. Gilmour, Gross, Gilmour again. Now Veltman, 5 yards outside the penalty area. Buonanotte, this is brilliant. Gross, unlucky. One last pass was all it needed, and it was too heavy for Welbeck, and Travers has got it for Bournemouth.
Yeah, it was wonderful football, wasn't it? Moving the ball from one side of the 18-yard area to the other. And then, as you say, it's some wonderful one and two touch football, and it's just that final pass which has just found them wanting a little bit this afternoon, as we see Senesi on the floor getting a little bit of a stretch from his centre half teammate Lloyd Kelly. Cramp, fatigue kicking in.
And meanwhile, Brighton's number 13, Pascal Gross, who played that slightly too strong a pass for Danny Welbeck, you could see how irritated he was. He leant over, he almost thumped the ground in frustration. He's created 90 chances this season, Pascal Gross, in the Premier League. And actually, at the start of the weekend, in the whole of the league, only Bruno Fernandes and Martin Ødegaard are higher on that list than Pascal Gross.
Yeah, it's the kind of player that, you know, that creative player that creates chances, can play that killer pass in key moments. And as you say, saw his frustration there at that final ball, trying to find Welbeck. You'd have to say if it was the perfect pass that he was looking for, Welbeck would have been in one-on-one.
So Brighton 10 minutes away from a second Premier League defeat in 4 days, having lost 4-0 to Manchester City on Thursday night. Roberto De Zerbi making 7 changes here today, but heading for consecutive defeats, and that has only ever happened once during his tenure as Brighton manager, and it was in his first month as Brighton manager as well. So 18 months Brighton have gone in the Premier League without ever losing 2 on the spin, which is a great record, but one that has been severely tested here today by Bournemouth, who are 2-0 up. Gilmour's got it though for Brighton. Gilmour clipping it forward. Gross is too much for him. It's going to bounce away from the German and out of play for a Bournemouth goal kick.
The difficult thing for sides like Brighton, when you find yourselves behind in a stage of the game like this, and the way that the match has gone, you find that sort of pass from Gilmour there, you start trying to force things a little bit more than what you might normally, and it takes a bit of bravery and sort of calmness to stay composed and not force things at times, but you understand why they're doing it, because they're so eager to get back on terms, or at least get a goal back in the game and try and give them some opportunity of getting a foothold back in the game again.
And the flip side is that Bournemouth are heading for their 13th Premier League win of the season, unless Brighton can shift the narrative here. Buonanotte, pass was away from Enciso. Bournemouth clear, but only as far as the Paraguayan, who's got it back again, giving it to Barco, his cross, but only Welbeck in there, and it wasn't anywhere near him really, and Ouattara lets it trickle out of play and go behind.
Yeah, not a great decision to deliver the ball into the box there. I don't think, there was only literally one Brighton player that was even on the edge of the box, and it was Danny Welbeck, I think. So the ball in certainly was highly unlikely to find any of his teammates. Welbeck would have been the only individual that he was looking to pick out, but overhit it, goes out for a goal kick, and Bournemouth won't be in any rush to sort of play high tempo football now, I wouldn't imagine.
They are not too far away, Bournemouth, from reaching their highest ever points tally in a Premier League season, and they're going to do it with games to spare as well. So this is going to turn into a very, very good season for Andoni Iraola, who was only saying this week, Franny, that he thought that he might have been sacked earlier in the season. He didn't win any of his first 9 in the Premier League, as you mentioned earlier. Felt like it was a serious possibility. Said he never really got that vibe from the board, but he said, I know how football works, and I was fearing it a little bit, but Bournemouth will be very pleased they didn't push the button. Yeah,
and we've seen a real turnaround of things, haven't we?
Senesi feeding it through. Cliver, Bournemouth 2-0 up, looking for a third. Solanke can't quite get there. Desperate Brighton defending to get it away. Both Dunk and Barco were plunging. Bournemouth retrieve it again on the halfway line with Cook.
Lovely bit of movement from Solanke and a great little reverse pass from Cliver. Almost found the top goal scorer, but just a little bit too far.
Now maybe more profits to come. Semenyo, low ball in. Solanke, good defending. Webster got across his path and got it behind for a Bournemouth corner.
Yeah, very important touch from Webster. Dominic Solanke racing in on goal. Clearly got some sort of effort on target. He was headed goal bound, low on the floor, but Webster doing well, just stretching out. I think he might have even clipped off his knee as he was making the challenge, but it worked.
He's the one amongst many in blue and white in that penalty area right now that are barking instructions. Adam Webster. They cannot afford to concede again, Brighton. Bournemouth corner, headed away by Dunk, who was at the far post. Retrieved by Aarons on the far right hand side, and Ciso too strong for him, but he can't keep it in play. And it's going to be a Bournemouth throw, and there are 6 minutes plus stoppage time to go. Bournemouth 2, Brighton 0 here on 5 Live Sports Extra. And as you can imagine, there is no immediate rush at all from Adam Smith to go and get that ball to take this Bournemouth throw.
Well, on a number of occasions when we've covered games this season, Chris, we've seen Roberto De Zerbi very animated on the touchline. His personality, his character, but he's in the dugout now, witnessing his side struggle in this game today.
Just won a corner as well here, Bournemouth. And that is an interesting point you make, Franny, because I was at the game on Thursday night for Brighton's defeat against Manchester City, and I thought, by De Zerbi's standards, he was really quiet on the touchline on Thursday, because he's normally ranting and raving, moving around all over the place, never sitting still. Wasn't like that Thursday, and you picked it up today, not been like it either.
Yeah, I mean, is there a reason for that? Possibly. We touched on the team selection and some of the younger players that started.
Bournemouth corner into the near post, away by Veltman. Didn't make good connections with it. They're going to have another go at this here, Bournemouth. Dango Ouattara ended up in a heap at the near post. Barco was clinging on to him. Had to be a little bit careful there, Valentin Barco, because he did put his hands on Ouattara. It was a touch clumsy. Those two are destined to be alongside each other again here for this Bournemouth corner from the right-hand side, which Cook is going to take delicately, right-footed, near post, headed away by Veltman, picked up by Ouattara, who's lost the flight of the ball. Barco ran into trouble. Christie's got it back for Bournemouth. As Senesi turns and loops it up to Solanke in the middle, who feels like he was being clung onto there. No penalty given. It was Lewis Dunk who was trying to physically get the better of Dominic Solanke. Paul Tierney was in a good position to wave away the protests.
Paul Tierney certainly wasn't being swayed at all by the home fans' appeals. My initial reaction was the way Solanke was trying to strike the ball, that he was impeded, but it wasn't given.
Aaron's trying to feed it through the gap for Cliver, read by Webster, who came across to shut down the situation. Now Dunk gets it upfield, and Ciso with a sharp layup to Joao Pedro, beautifully weighted, and now Joao Pedro carrying it down the left hand side, gives it to Enciso, pokes it back to Joao Pedro again, tried a trick, got the ball tangled within his feet, and Adam Smith says thank you very much while Joao Pedro sat on the ground, and Bournemouth get the ball back again with Christie.
Yeah, and they're playing out through the press as well. Got to say, as the ticking seconds tick by,
and there might be further damage inflicted by Bournemouth here. Kluivert's into Brighton's penalty area. Kluivert shoots! It's 3-0 to Bournemouth. He has whizzed that beyond Verbruggen, and the points are secured now for Andoni Iraola's team. Bournemouth heading for their first win over Brighton in 4 years, and Justin Kluivert has his goal this afternoon on what has been a very good one for Bournemouth, but one where Brighton have been picked apart, Franny Benali.
Yeah, and it was a matter of moments from when Joao Pedro made that little mistake in the attacking third. They lose possession of the ball, and then before you know it, Bournemouth are just breaking past the Brighton players. The ball gets released down the right-hand side. Kluivert picks it up, he drives at Dunk, cuts inside on his left foot and fires it past the goalkeeper into the back of the net. A positive, dominant display, deserved winners with this 3-goal lead from what we've seen so far today.
I mentioned that stat about Justin Kluivert earlier. It means he's now scored more Premier League goals than his dad did, Patrick Kluivert, which is one that I'm sure he'll raise with his father a little later on this evening.
His dad might have 1 or 2 things he can come back with, but it's a nice one. I'd love to hear it. We'd like to see that little WhatsApp message.
You're quite right. It will be about a 2-sentence one from Justin Kluivert, and then his dad can come back with about 9 bullet points, I think, to put him in his place.
14, Alex Scott.
So, 3-0 Bournemouth lead Brighton and Hove Albion, so there is no doubt in the direction of the points this afternoon here between these two South Coast sides. This has been ultimately a very dominant display by Bournemouth, who have scored goals, have missed chances as well, and Brighton have not really offered enough, and this certainly hasn't been of the high standards that we've seen of some of the performances from Roberto De Zerbi's tenure, for sure.
No, exactly, and maybe we're reading a little bit too much into it, who knows, but they've certainly been well below what we've seen them playing before the season.
Here are Bournemouth again. They have got the bit between their teeth. From the right-hand side, Aaron's cross blocked by Baliba, who's just come on, the Brighton midfielder, off the back of that Bournemouth goal, Carlos Baliba. Here's Clivert, the goal scorer, with the back of his heel to Christie on the edge of the box. Christie trying to find some space. Christie for Semenyo, left side of the penalty area. Semenyo's delivery closed down by Veltman. Bounces twice and behind for a Bournemouth corner as we move in the final 60 seconds.
Do you know what, Chris, the way the game's gone, and yes, Brighton have been off par, and there's probably clearly reasons for that, injuries and just a little bit of confidence maybe. Team selections, again, you could ask questions about, but Bournemouth have thoroughly enjoyed playing this game of football. They've bossed the game, they've looked strong in every single department, and they've scored the goals that they've needed to look like wrapping up all 3 points.
Cook's corner into the near post for Bournemouth, 3-0 up against Brighton, headed away, and then Clivert has sent one of the most bizarre passes back to Mark Travers of the whole game, because it's had Travers scampering way outside of his box, all over towards that right-hand side. He's sent it forward, Solanke chases it, and Verbruggen, the Brighton goalkeeper, claims it. And we're about to find out how many minutes of stoppage time we're going to have. 5 is the answer, as indicated by the fourth official, Michael Salisbury, below us. Another one back for Tottenham in the North London derby. Spurs 2, Arsenal 3. Penalty from Son Heung-min. That's on 5 Live right now. Seems there's jeopardy in that game. There certainly isn't here. Bournemouth heading for their 13th Premier League win of the season. They're going to go on to 48 points. And that, as we mentioned, is going to be their highest ever tally in a Premier League season. Semenyo with Solanke waiting in the middle. Semenyo's in the box. He's just got the ball stuck under his feet slightly, and then has thought, you know what, I'm not going to run for goal, I'm going to run for the corner flag instead and just protect what we have. And Semenyo, being harassed by Veltman, has got the throw, and Bournemouth are going to make a couple more changes here. We're going to see James Hale, the 22-year-old defender, who has been on loan with Blackburn Rovers this season, so a couple of minutes for him. And also coming on for his Premier League debut, the 20-year-old midfielder Dominic Sadie, formerly of West Ham's academy. He's been with Bournemouth for a couple of years. It isn't his debut, he has played in the League Cup before, but lovely moment for Dominic Sadie to come onto the pitch in a Premier League game, with the game all wrapped up as well for his team.
Huge moment for any youngster, isn't it? Sort of coming on, either making an appearance as a young player or a debut. And the fans love to see it as well. And you've got to say, the circumstances in the game today, it's the perfect time to be putting them on.
It's all done, but actually Bournemouth aren't done it. You get the feeling that they'd actually like to make it 4 if they could. Brighton know they're beaten. Is there a consolation at least for the Seagulls, as Enciso goes chasing a Barco pass. Smith with the challenge on Enciso, got all of the ball. Enciso's off the pitch, rolling around at the moment, holding his ankle. Bournemouth are going to carry on though. No reason to them to stop really. Cook, I didn't see anything wrong with the challenge from Smith. Tierney didn't either, the referee.
No, and he's back on his feet, hobbling a little bit, but you always wonder sometimes, is it just an attempt to win a foul and a free kick, or have they actually been fouled?
So Bournemouth moving to a 6th game unbeaten at home. And it means they'll have taken 20 points from their last 10 games in the Premier League. And even at the start of the weekend, only Arsenal had collected more Premier League points in that period. So it just gives you a flavour of how well Andoni Iraiola's team are ticking along at the moment. And I was speaking to one or two in the press room actually of the Bournemouth persuasion before the game, and they were saying that had Bournemouth won at Luton a few weeks ago when they led and then lost very late on, they could well have been in the conversation for a European place, but as it is, it's probably too much to ask of this Bournemouth team to get into 7th. And Semenyo is met by a full-blooded challenge from Joel Veltman below us here on the right-hand side. Nothing wrong with the challenge from Veltman, got all of the ball, but Semenyo appears quite seriously hurt.
Yeah, he looks pretty distressed, holding his right knee at the moment, literally on the touchline, and he thumps the grass a couple of times with his fist, which suggests that he knows that it could be a serious one.
I mean, obviously we hope that no player is seriously hurt like this, but for Antoine Semenyo, this would be so cruel, because he has been outstanding for Bournemouth this season, and right at the end of this game, it's the way he lands, Franny, isn't it? I can tell you're reacting straight away. You know this isn't good.
Replay, it almost like bends underneath him. He lands on his right knee, I think, after the challenge. I don't think it's anything to do with it being a bad challenge at all, but it's just one of those awkward ones where you ride the challenge, he lands on his right leg, but then his knee or his leg bends in such a way and his weight lands on it that it could have twinged something. Clearly in a lot of pain at the moment, and you just hope that it's nothing serious.
They sort of look like they're testing the movement in the knee here, the medical stuff. I mean, you'll know far more than me. What's going on down there? Because it's all happening right in front of us.
Yeah, it's not far away from us, is it? And the sad thing is, Chris, is that the medics are bringing the stretcher, which we certainly hope is not going to be needed. He's been an outstanding performer for Bournemouth this season, hasn't he? Incredible. He's had a good return himself. The 8 goals he's scored this season, he looks sharp, he looks bright. He's part of that Areola side now that has that attacking threat to the team as well, and this would be a huge blow to him personally, but also Bournemouth for their remaining games. They've got a tough running of matches now, haven't they? Arsenal away, their next fixture, Brentford at home, and then away to Chelsea on the last day of the season.
Sorry, Franny, I was just going to say, sat up now, Antoine Semenyo. There's plenty of medics talking to him, but this feels like a real blemish on Bournemouth's day. They're going to win the game. They're 3-0 up against Brighton. We're deep in stoppage time, but there's lots of Bournemouth players. 5 Bournemouth players have come over here to check on the welfare of Antoine Semenyo.
Yeah, and I think when you see that concern of other players, they understand if it is a bad one. You never want to see a teammate or an opponent with a real bad one like that, and he's now sat on the stretcher, but looks clearly distressed at whatever the extent of the injury is.
It's a knee problem, isn't it? It looks like it is.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Yeah, most definitely. He's just being strapped up and about to be removed from the pitch. Real sorry sight to see.
Yeah, this is a real cruel ending to the afternoon and maybe to the season for Antoine Semenyo. And if this is the last time we see Antoine Semenyo this season, who is leaving on a stretcher with his shirt pulled up over his face, clearly in a lot of pain, probably a lot of mental pain as well, because he will know himself the severity of this, I'm sure. Well, let us say now that he has had a wonderful campaign for Bournemouth.
Amazing. And we're speculating at what, and we don't know the extent of his injury at the moment, but assuming it is a real bad one, I mean, this is the moment and the start of what for many players is a very, very long journey back to fitness, and like I say, hopefully it isn't serious and he will be back soon and it's not bad, but you just feel for any player in that kind of position coming off injured at all, let alone if it is a bad one.
So we're 7 minutes into stoppage time, but obviously we've had that delay for the injury to Antoine Semenyo, so we're going to play a few more minutes more. Bournemouth 3, Brighton 0. Antoine Semenyo has been taken down the tunnel on a stretcher. Here is Gross for Brighton. Now Buonanotte. It would be nothing more than a consolation for Brighton if they were to score from here, you feel. Barco on the far left-hand side. And there is the full-time whistle. And Bournemouth comprehensive winners over Brighton and Hove Albion. The first time they've beaten the Seagulls in 4 years. But the significance of this win for Andoni Iraola's team is that it's taken them on to 48 Premier League points, and that is the most points that this team have ever collected in their seasons in the Premier League. So a mark of the fabulous work under their Spanish Basque manager. And for Bournemouth today, they have swept Brighton aside. Franny Benali.
They've been outstanding today for a large part of the season as well, Chris. Bournemouth. Andoni Iraola's done an incredible job. You think that it took them so long to get their first win at the beginning of the season. That victory back when was it, sort of October time, something like that. That win then lifted them out of the bottom 3. So for them to now go on and accumulate the best points return in a Premier League season is just, you know, it speaks volumes for Iriola, but the players, the staff, and what the work is that they've done from that difficult start to where they are in the season now.
Yeah, the goals for Bournemouth today. Senesi 13 minutes in, then 2 after half-time from Enisonau and from Justin Kluivert. And the worry for Brighton, Franny, that obviously the run that they're on is a problem. It's 1 win in 9 now in the Premier League, but it's the goals, isn't it? Because they haven't scored again today. So it's 1 goal in their last 5 Premier League games, and as we mentioned during commentary, 1 goal that wasn't even scored by a Brighton player, an own goal.
No, exactly, and goals have been very, you know, difficult to come by, haven't they? As you rightly say, and that will be a concern. You know, it's not necessarily individuals not playing well. You've got to look at it as a team and as a collective. We've touched on, yes, what is the impact of the injuries? Clearly that does have an impact. European football as well, the workload that they've had. But you want to be as a football player and as a club. You want to be playing at the highest level against the best teams, the best players, European competitions, and you've got to find a way of managing that. And that's the difficulty, I would say, for what Brighton are experiencing at the moment. They've lost some players, as you said, key players, but they've recruited well, they've always signed quality. It's just finding that right balance of, you know, what works for you and getting that right blend of players to put out on a pitch each week.
Franny, really appreciated your company today here on 5 Live Sports Extra. The former Southampton defender, Franny Benali, with us here at Vitality Stadium. Very, very straightforward win for Bournemouth in the end. 3-0 winners against Brighton and Hove Albion. So they are up to 10th Bournemouth in the Premier League table. They've gone above Wolves, level on points with Chelsea. They're now 5 points behind Newcastle in 7th. So it's not completely out of the question that Bournemouth might still be able to mount a late challenge for a very unlikely European place. It's also finished at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Tottenham 2, Arsenal 3. So Arsenal have stretched the gap to 4 points at the top of the Premier League table. Manchester City play later today. That gets underway in just under half an hour. Their match Forest, you can hear that live from 4:30 over on 5 Live. From 6:30 here on 5 Live Sports Extra, we'll have live Women's Super League action between Bristol City and Manchester City. But for now, we go back to the cricket, the county championship.